Well, good evening. This is Brian O'Shea with another episode of Investigate Everything. What are we talking about today? Today we are talking about what I call the Anti-Imperialists. Now, you may have heard a lot of noise about the Civil War in MAGA, or MAGA's splitting apart, or it's splitting MAGA, all this kind of nonsense. There is no civil war in MAGA. If you believe in MAGA, Make America Great Again, or America First, you'll know that true patriots that believe in the same thing could never split apart because we're all unified in one message. So what is happening? What's happened is we've been infiltrated. Now, for those of you that have been here before, you know I've talked about this many times. Today we're going to get into a little more detail on what that network is, where it came from, what its goals are, and what its 4 pillars of BS are. Now, what do I mean by 4 pillars? Well, everything that's kind of annoying in the world has pillars, okay? The communists talk about the 5 pillars of civilization that you have to crush to get rid of Western civilization. Those would be like religion, security, education, government, there's a couple others. Society, I don't know. And then the Muslims have their 6 pillars. Some think there's 7. They include that extra pillar of jihad, which is not a real pillar. But and then what I found is there are pillars of BS upon which the house of false messaging is built with these anti-imperialists. We'll get into that in a second. But what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the anti-imperialists, what are they? These are the people that are constantly anti-establishment. Doesn't matter if it's left or right in the White House. They don't care. They go after it anyways. Everything's a false flag. Everything's made up. And everything is... everyone's bad except for, weirdly, communist countries. That's what these anti-imperialists all seem to have in common. So, some of the more major anti-imperialists are, of course, Max Blumenthal and the Grayzone, the entire crew over there. But we've seen more. And I did a little analysis on where this came from. I'm a little shocked to see this is just the beginning of my research in the network of this. But let me see if I can call this up now, because I put together a little graph. And give me just a second. Here it is. All right. So right now, this is what I put together. Yes, I know there's a few names missing. What are we looking at here? The larger the hubs, the more of the core of the network they are. So let me explain this to you as you're looking at the network there that I have in front of you. Okay, so pretty much the messaging seems to start with the larger hubs that you see there: Grayzone, Mint Press News, Black Agenda Report, in certain circles. So those also represent who's connected to them the most. So that's called the core, highly interconnected cluster, the strong multi-type connections. These individuals and outlets, I wrote this up, so I am reading. These individuals and outlets routinely interact across multiple channels. We'll start with the Grayzone. The Grayzone, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, Ben Norton, Anya Parempil, I think that's Max Blumenthal's wife, and Rania Kalik, Kit Clarenberg. These are probably names that are very familiar to you. It's like a central hub. They have staff and contributors. They're frequently citing, hosting, and collaborating with many of the others on this list. Mint Press News often cross-posts or features Grayzone writers and related voices. Vanessa Beeley, let me see if I can find them. Vanessa Beeley here, I need a pointer. I don't know if it's going to let me get a pointer here. Down. Okay, where'd she go? Anyways, she's here somewhere. I'll find her in a second, but I'll keep talking as I do. Vanessa Beeley, who is on this list, and Ava Bartlett, who's also somewhere hidden in this list. These are heavily interconnected with each other and the broader group through Syria reporting, a keyword you're going to hear a lot, joint events, and mutual citations. Bailey has referenced figures like Scott Ritter frequently. Who's Scott Ritter? Well, Scott Ritter is on this list. I apologize. I didn't have like the pointer ready here. But anyways, he is... Okay, there's Rita. There's... Okay, Claire, there is Scott Ritter coming out of Mint Press News. Now, Scott Ritter, you may recall who this guy is. Someone actually in my audience recently tried to get me to... Thank you, Brian Fura. He's like the gist. The gist is this. There's a message, there's a network, and they're pushing this message out to kind of like what we thought were MAGA commentators, influencers. And this message is the same across this entire international network of influencers and a lot of platforms which have been set up by the Chinese Communist Party, as well as the Putin government, or people like Alexander Dugin, who have the ear, allegedly, of Vladimir Putin. What I am saying is this is a concerted effort to keep the message on the right, broken into pieces, and keep people arguing and keep them distracted. Does that make sense, Brian? Okay. And this is my kind of audience member right here, because keeping me on track. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. And we'll get into the messaging in a second. So I'm kind of showing you the network right now of who these people are. And they probably, some of these might look familiar to you, some might not. But one thing all of these people on this list have in common is pretty startling. Let me share this screen here. Okay, I'll just read it. Okay. Got it. Big list of notes. And by the way, Brian, if I think you're not new here, but if you are new here, I research all day and then I forget what time it is, so I'm rushing to get this out. But all of these are very, very connected. And what happens with this crowd here is that most of them started by talking about the the pro-Assad Syrian government. A lot of them, like Max Blumenthal and some of the earlier adopters on the list, they started by going against the U.S. bombing and intervention of the widely confirmed gassing of Syrian civilians by their own government. And that was not only a Trump thing, but that was also Obama thing, and I've done the research on this. It's pretty widely confirmed that Assad was doing horrible things to his own people. Now, let me just slow down so I make sense. Another thing all of these people have in common, and I will say this network has extended to Alex Jones, Owen Schroyer, a lot of... I guess the Hajj Twins are in the mix now. Rift TV, they always were kind of anti-Israel, at least since 2023, where they did this weird shift to anti-Israel. So many of them, it's hard to name them all. But these are the people you see on X who are constantly saying the same thing. They are saying, this is wrong, we're losing, why are we interfering, we got to be isolationists. Why are you giving all this money to Israel? Which, by the way, is far less than we give to Ukraine still, by about $15 billion. But it's the same message. What they have in common as well is they seem to think that any time the civilians of these areas speak up and say, hey, yo, they're massacring us, as we saw in Iran. When they speak up, these same influencers rarely even mention their existence, or they say, those aren't real protesters, those aren't real people suffering, those are crisis actors, it's a CIA or a Western plot to make you think that these authoritarian governments are being cruel to their people. I know it sounds ridiculous and like Bizarro World, but this is what they all share in common. The other thing that they all share in common is that a lot of whataboutery. Okay, so these are Americans, a lot of them. And if you have an argument with them, as I have on many occasions, you'll say, well, yeah, Iran did massacre 30,000 of their own civilians. And it's always the whataboutery answer. Yeah, but what about the United States in this war or this war? Yeah, but Iran may be developing nuclear weapons and they've sworn to use them on us. What about the United States, who keeps the entire world hostage because they have nuclear weapons? I mean, it just never ends. But that is the normal comeback. So that's how you identify them. Okay. They also tend to counter things with references to what I'm going to call the four pillars. So the four pillars, what are they? Well, what I've come up with for the four pillars is the four pillars are basically 9/11 was a hoax. All right, that's constant one. 9/11 was a hoax. We went into the Iraq War on false pretense, on false evidence. That I agree with. That's true. But they'll use this to say, that's why I know we're doing the same thing now. 9/11 was a hoax perpetuated by the Israelis because there was a report of Israelis dancing and slapping high fives in a van outside the site. Maybe there were, maybe there weren't. There's an arrest report. I'll give it to you tonight. Okay, that's a big one. It's 9/11 was something the Israelis did to drag us into war. Okay. And then if you argue that and say, well, no, it looks like there were actual planes that flew in. I was in Manhattan. My wife was in Lower Manhattan. I saw planes. I don't think I was seeing an illusion. Yeah, but the structural engineering wouldn't have let them gone down like that. This is a common argument. Now I'm going to get to where that argument comes from in just a second. And you're going to love this one. So those are your two pillars. And then the most recent pillar, of course, is they tried to make October 7th as a hoax. That's Max Blumenthal's stance that it never happened. That didn't really obviously take root. So the third pillar is lately the Epstein files. Well, the DOJ lied to us about the Epstein files, which it seems they did, to be fair. In June, they said there was a case closed, there's nothing to see, and then they release all these files. Okay, but the Epstein files, he's Jewish, there's a bunch of Jewish names in there. Why are we fighting a war with pedophile nation? These things you'll hear all the time. So that is the third pillar. Okay, and then the fourth pillar that it seems to be forming, and there could be more pillars, so submit your pillars as you see fit. The fourth pillar that seems to be they're trying to move into is the J6 pipe bomber investigation. Okay, now you see most of these pillars that they rest their arguments on, that they fall back on when they can't win an argument. It's all buttery, but it all targets the DOJ. Okay, so I guess a major pillar that they're trying to form to is the Tyler Robinson case, the man who most likely shot and killed and assassinated Charlie Kirk. They're trying to make that, but the FBI lies, which, okay. And if you say, well, no, it seems like a pretty open and shut case, they'll say, well, now they have Joe Kent who said, I'll testify in that case because they blocked me from investigating. They blocked me. Okay, so you see these pillars forming, but they form way back and they fall back on them every time. So this is kind of like what Dan Bongino's running into right now. I like Dan Bongino. I like him even more since he left the FBI job. I'm not going to make excuses for why he said Epstein committed suicide. We legally don't know what really happened there. I'm not saying he did or he didn't. Personally, I don't think he committed suicide, but understanding that if there's an investigation going on, okay, I don't even know why he said it, but I'm not going to put up a defense for him there. He could put up his own defense. What I will say that where his value to me comes from is, as the deputy director of the FBI, he is a senior member of the intelligence community and a person you would see in the Situation Room all the time. And that's just the way the intelligence community is set up. What he's running into is that very thing he either had to say or decided to say about the Epstein files, and people always fall back to that. if you cite him, they're like, oh, he's a proven liar. Why are you citing him? Maybe he is. Maybe he lied about that thing. I don't know. But I do know this. The information he's giving in the stuff I'm citing is sound, and it's easily researched. It's easily disproven if he's lying. So for me, it doesn't really matter if he lied about one thing. If he's telling the truth and that truth is sourceable and citable, okay, it's obviously the truth. If Dan Bongino goes outside and says, it's a sunny day today with a couple clouds, and I look in the sky and I see it's a sunny day with a couple of clouds, he's telling the truth. It doesn't matter if he didn't tell the truth before. But he's running into that. And thank God his audience is smart enough not to buy into these pillars of bullshit. Okay, so that's a normal argument. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. I'm checking the comments. Okay, so those are the 4 pillars, and they're constantly building them, they being this network. Okay, so you got the network in front of you. You can add, in my opinion, Marjorie Taylor Greene to that. You can add a whole host of people to that. I just don't want to platform certain people, but the Hajj Twins, everything. They're all saying the same thing. Okay, so where does this network come from? Any questions, by the way? Okay, so look for those pillars. Those are the arguments people will constantly use. Now, let's talk about who these people are. Okay, now the original, what's really interesting about this group is a lot of them really started off way back in like 2001, 9/11, where they started calling out, this is a false flag. Okay, but where this particular group really sprung up was between 2010, 2013, when we started having all these issues with Syria and the reports coming out what they were doing to their people. Okay, and what's crazy about that is that it's the same network from way back then. I do apologize. I'm trying to get to that page. Let me just, you know what, I'm just going to share this. And just so you know, I did use Grok for a lot of this, but honestly, I used Grok just to organize it. I've got the links and I've confirmed all this, and anyone that's been here for a while knows that all this stuff is well sourced. Okay, so let me just pull this up really quickly. I'm going to share the screen, and here we go. God, you know, in my head, my presentation always sounds better than it does when I'm actually here, but that's okay. All right, is this the one? Nope. Yeah, that looks like it. Okay. Yeah. Make this a little bigger for you so you can see it. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is like the bigger list that's on that is on the visual I just showed you. Let me get to the top of this. Okay. And so what we're doing is we're getting into the history of this whole network. And as you can see, the network is massive. All the people on this network are confirmed beyond Grok. I've been on this for a while, not to beat a dead horse. So we're going to skip down to here, and then which of the following... Okay, so which of the following users have posted content condemning the United States strikes on Iran? Now, this list, just so you know, I got from a site whose initials are APAC. It's the Association of Investment in Popular Action Committees. It's not the Israeli one. It's actually a pro-Assad, pro-Syria under Assad, and pro kind of terrorist group. All the people you see on this list that I'm asking about have all received money from this group. So they say, you know, and I confirm this, virtually all the listed users, journalists, and activists and outlets have posted content strongly condemning the United States and Israel's strikes on Iran during the 2025-2026 Iran conflict. Okay? And that's easily seen if you just go to the different websites. So here's a breakdown of the X activities. Dmitry Lakaris, and you can see there, multiple recent posts documenting civilian damage, U.S. airstrikes. These are all pretty big influencers, hospital in Tehran. George Galloway. George Galloway is a big UK voice, and he is a open and avowed Marxist. He actually blocked me live on our last show we did when I was talking about this, which, thank you, George. Appreciate it. Thanks for underlining my work for me. Frequent posts calling Trump's Iran war, questioning official narratives. And they're being nice. If you watch George Galloway, he literally is just anti-Western civilization. Okay, if it's not communist, he ain't having it. I always call him the ugly Trotsky. Oh, here we go. We're going to get into that. I will just put that up because this is a common thing they say right here. So I want to thank LEJRM. So anyone making legitimate criticisms is bad. All of these people have said that exact same thing. So I thank you for making that example for me. Another one that they use is, oh, I'm just asking questions. Oh, so questioning the narrative is bad. No, it's not. You should question the narrative. And you could question it without receipts. But if you don't have receipts, you're probably lying, or you don't know what you're doing, or you're parroting someone else. So, whatever your name is, go ahead and, feel free to post. Don't post links because I can't click on them here, but post on my X. I'll check out what you got to prove me wrong, even though I haven't stated a case yet. Okay, consortium news, big one. George Galloway, big one. Mint Press News, you've probably seen them reporting on Iranian retaliatory strikes in broader context of the U.S.-Israeli negotiations. Scott Ritter, we've talked about him a lot. Someone here recommended him to me. I didn't know much about him. I did find out that, A, he was under investigation for something with the Russians, and then also went to jail because he apparently or allegedly or was found guilty of trying to solicit sex from... an agent posing as a 15-year-old girl. So you might say, well, it doesn't matter if he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. It does matter. Well, LEJRM, I appreciate your honesty. Which one are you? What camp do you fall into? Just so we could argue. I'm not trying to out you, but, intel's intel. So if you're providing it, we're happy to have it. But yeah, Ritter, I looked him up, and does it matter that he was accused and found guilty of that? Yeah, it does matter. You know why? Because it's pretty hard to get a job if you're on a sex offender list. I'm pretty sure he should be. I'm not sure if he is. I haven't checked. So that makes you highly recruitable by powers that might want you to do something against your government or against the status quo or even against your company. Don't limit espionage to country on country. I used to do competitive intel. It's like legal industrial espionage. It's like retirement association A versus retirement association B. It's wild. But you recruit assets and you collect intel on each other. Someone who has problems like that is highly recruitable and highly, I would say, they're more likely to take a paycheck. I'm not saying he is, but that's how you recruit people. Those are the kind of people you want, people that are... They've got major vulnerabilities, socially, professionally, or financially. Caitlin Johnson, huge voice in the whole sharp anti-war commentary, labeling justifications as lies and pretexts. Okay, Max Blumenthal and the Grayzone. This is a widely covered publication. It's got some strange funding. It looks like it's based in the UK. He's actually had Kai Pritzker as the producer of his radio show for Grayzone. Kai Pritzker is the son of Penny Pritzker, who was the Treasury Secretary under Obama, and also our pal J.B. Pritzker's nephew. Okay, Kai Pritzker also, who's not, I don't know what that means. Sorry, I'm featuring LJAM. I don't know who's not. I don't know what that means. More context. But Kai was actually camped out in the Venezuelan embassy as a protest, and this is one of Max Blumenthal's guys. I'm amazed by a lot of conservative podcasters that I've seen on Rumble, whether they're real conservatives or opportunists. But a lot of people on Rumble, which is primarily supposed to be conservative type of content, have platformed this guy, or a lot of people that they think they're conservatives have platformed Max Blumenthal. A lot of them, Kim Iversen, Jimmy Dore. Now, we know they're not conservatives, but a lot of people don't. Okay. And they platform this guy, and everything he says is a counter narrative. What Blumenthal and the Grayzone never say is anything bad about Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, China, Lebanon, Hamas, Russia. They never say anything bad. It's always, we've got them all wrong, or China's better, that sort of thing. So, okay. Yeah, Jimmy Dore's a big one. He's definitely a big one. All right, so here's some other ones. That's the whole crowd there. The entire Grayzone here. And just as an example, we talked about George Galloway, and I talk about these people platforming each other. Just tonight, I went to George Galloway's. Okay, and this is what I see. Tonight, he has Raina Kalik and Click Clarenberg, two of the people on the list. She's one of these main anti-establishment ones, of course, so is he. And then Kit Clarenberg's with the Grayzone. And he also took money from the other APAC. Okay, so I think it's funny, and you can see that he blocked me. But it's really interesting. Just when I was setting up the show, I was like, really? Oh, they're right there. How about that? Okay. Get back to my list. Share this tab instead. Okay, so then here you have Kit Clarenberg belongs up there. One that stands out here is Jackson Hinkle. You've probably seen this guy a lot. He's the founder of the American Communist Party, also hailed by Alexander Dugin, the Russian philosopher that is calling for the complete destruction of the United States. His words, not mine. And then a lot of these people are just Middle East activists. Jimmy Dore show, as someone just mentioned. Antiwar.com. Now, this is interesting. I never really heard of these guys. They've been on that list from the APAC, the other APAC that I showed you earlier. But what was interesting is I ended up getting kind of not attacked, but they took an interest in me the other day, which I thought was wild. Okay, so let me get down to them. Okay, I'm going to get this. I'm going to put it on the screen in a second. Yes, I see this anti-war, and they're talking to me, and they're like, hey, man, the things I was saying, and I wasn't saying anything bad about Joe Ken. I was just saying, hey, the stuff he's saying doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in how the intel community works. It doesn't make sense here, there, or anywhere. I don't know what he's talking about when he says, I was blocked from investigating and all. That's nonsense. There's no investigative authority at the NCTC. But let me get to these guys, because this just kind of blew my mind. And again, I'd never heard of them. Here, I'll share my screen so you can see my scroll. All right. Okay, so excuse my foul language. Sometimes come in a little hot. All right. So they went at me a couple times, if I can find it. God, I've been busy. But they were like, boy, you changed. Oh, I can't believe you said that sort of thing. And I'm like, who are these guys? And then they tried to debate me, which I won't debate on X. It's just stupid. You don't know who you're talking to on X. It's a waste of time. Plus, I'm not going to type out. I don't do it. It's like, you don't even know who you're arguing with. It could be a bot for all you know. But getting down to this, damn, where are these guys? So, anyways, antiwar.com came at me, and I was like, well, okay, I know what you're selling. I'm not biting, and you must be one of these people. So I called them out on that, and I didn't hear from them for a while, but I will get to that. There's Batman, some other things here. And it just blew me away that they were on that list the whole time. And that list actually comes from the website for the Association for Investment in Popular Action Committees, or what I call the Evil APAC. Okay, and what you'll see is a lot of them are quite, a lot of the people in that network they seem to be everywhere. And they seem to be connected to everyone who's platforming everyone else. And it's just pretty wild that they even use that APAC name to confuse people. That's done on purpose. And, again, I just find it fascinating. All right, here we go. I think this is them. Nope. All right. Sorry, guys, I don't plan these things. I just go on and do it. So we don't really have sponsors. So, like, if you want to donate, to go to dailycloud.io and click on the big donate button. That's how we hopefully will afford a producer someday, but that's okay. As long as we share the research, that's the most important thing. All right. Well, guys, I'm not going to keep scrolling looking for this. It doesn't seem to be working out for me. But if I don't find it in 3 more scrolls, then I'm going to stop. And by the way, a lot of these things that I retweet are either really hilarious or really informative. So feel free to, follow along. God damn, where are these guys? I guess I should probably just put in the name of them. All right. Yeah, here we go. Okay. All right. So these guys are... All right, so this, you see what they've done here. Okay, so I get this, I make this comment. This is pretty funny. Nope. Okay, so I make this comment here. Hopefully you guys can see that. I said, so they said, replying to me, let's see, Dan is a proven liar, and we can see the text messages ourselves. I trust the facts over fallacies. And you telling me you trust Dr. Fauci now with your appeal to authority. What happened to you? I don't know what they're talking about with Fauci. I guess what they're saying is if I trust Dan Bongino because he's an official, I must trust all government officials. It's just, and it's obviously written with AI because you can't understand it. And so I said, Fauci, what the F are you going on about? And then the Department of War commentary, who's listed as a parody account because they're obviously not the Department of War. Were you not against lockdowns and vaccines, criticizing those in charge that attended briefings? Of course I was. And you don't know what an appeal to authority is? Of course I do. Or just don't see how stupid your reply was and how it is the same BS spewed during that era. And so I said, I'm guessing one of these is you. So until I know which human I am talking to, I will not waste my time with anons. With regard to this last post, if you were trying to fit circles into squares and making all or nothing arguments and forcing the frame of the conversation, as my favorite bosses would like to say, I might have been born yesterday, but I studied all night. I know this play and I'm happy to play, but only if I know who I am playing checkers with. No, this is not chess, it's checkers. And so I just listed the people on the site because when you get these, just check them out. I'm sure you do. First thing I do is check out where they're coming from. This is US based, doesn't mean anything. But here they are. They got their website listed there and anti-war right there. And you just have to roll through this. You get back to our original list of people who were originally funded by the Syrian Solidarity Movement and et al. And there they are right there with several others. Okay, all part of the same network. And as you saw from my earlier slide here, the network, they all interact heavily with each other. Anti-war is on there. You can see all the people on that list. All right, get back to that one. Okay, there we go. All right. So near universal pattern. And by the way, AI's really good, I think, for getting your thoughts organized. I wish I could speak from it. I guess I can, but that'd be boring. But just so you know, like, again, I want to reiterate, if you're just coming into the show late, that I do check out everything, and I don't start with AI, but when I have a ton of notes and everything, I just plug them in and say, hey, organize this, or hey, can you run some connections between this people on this list? And then, of course, you always have to check, because AI will lie to you. I like Grok, I like Perplexity, I like them all, but they will lie to you, and you have to check because their algorithm tells them to please you. So if they don't have the answer, you got to be careful. You got to test them all the time. They will lie to you just to please you. So these are not mainstream pro-yes voices. They overlap heavily with critics of Israel, U.S. foreign policy, and past interventions. Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen. If we've done it, they've been against it. All of them. Condemnation appears in ex-post Substack articles, YouTube interviews, and outlets like Grayzone, Mint News, and Consortium News. Anti-War Consortium News, Mint Press, Black Agenda Report, Information Clearinghouse, Moon of Alabama, which I don't know who they are, but I got to check them out, have published multiple pieces against the strikes. These guys are deceased. They're on the list. Thank you. A tiny handful might focus more on reporting than outright condemnation, but none in this list are known to support or defend the U.S. strikes, and I would add U.S. policy in general. Support for the campaign is concentrated in mainstream pro-Israel accounts, not here. They're talking about X. In short, someone on this list, they have almost certainly condemned the U.S. strikes on Iran, based on my question. This group represents a cohesive anti-interventionist bloc, active since 2026, escalation active earlier than that. Again, you always got to check Grok. And then they go on. So I asked, what issues do the following people have in common? And again, same list, and this list you can find on a Substack article that I'll share with you, but you can find that at consumerdiligence.substack.org.com. These are all strong anti-imperialist, specifically anti-U.S. foreign policy and anti-Western intervention. I would say anti-U.S. and anti-Western, because that's what they seem to be. There's nothing we can do right. They consistently criticize U.S.-led military action, sanctions, regime change efforts across the globe, viewing them as driven by corporate lobby and hegemonic interests rather than genuine security and humanitarian concerns. That's a really good point to make. Okay? Really good point to make is it's not to say they're not driven by corporate, okay, not driven by lobbies and hegemonic interests. I'm all for the hegemonic interest, let me tell you, because I want this to be a one superpower world with us at the top. Because if anyone's going to be the superpower, which is called a hyperpower when there are no other superpowers, I want it to be us, because I don't want it to be China. I don't want it to be Iran. I certainly don't want it to be Russia. So I'm all for that. Because let's face the facts. If we go to a tripolar world or a multipolar world, like a lot of even MAGA is in favor of, do people really think that, let's say those polarized areas are Iran, Turkey, Russia, China, and the U.S. Do people really think that they're not going to gang up on us and take us out? It'll still be a multipolar world until it's not, because then they'll start taking out each other. But that entire theory rests on the fact that we're all going to stay in our quadrants, and we've seen how that works out. Okay. All right. Strong opposition, of course, to Israel. Nearly all condemn Israel actions in Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, and the broader region as aggressive, occupation, or genocide. Many frame the U.S. support for Israel as a key driver of regional wars and criticize Israel lobby, e.g. AIPAC, not the other AIPAC, for influencing U.S. policy. This includes support for Palestinian rights and skepticism towards official narratives on conflicts involving Israel. So let's explore that a little bit. What they do is they question the official narrative. How do we get there? See, this is how we got there is because the official narrative tends to filter through legacy media. Okay? It tends to filter from the podium at the White House. And the legacy media and the podium at the White House have been badly tainted, if not corroded or rotted from the inside out. So what the anti-imperialists do is they will say, well, you're sourcing this news site, you must be lying. Not if I check the sources and they check out. Let's not forget that the people that broke the, Neville Roy Singham case, a guy who's like the big Chinese propagandist, married to Jodie Evans, who formed Code Pink, sits in the same building as Xinhua over in China, Neville Roy Singham. That story was originally broken by the New York Times back in 2023. A lot of podcasters say they broke it, whatever. No, the New York Times broke that, and it was a good piece. And I'm reading it, and you know how I feel about the New York Times. They're totally corrupt. It's just a big op-ed rag now. But that one piece, I'm reading it, I'm like, wow, this is really thoroughly researched, well-cited, well-sourced, which is a rarity for the New York Times these days. I would say, but if I was, beholden to this type of thinking, I'd be like, it's all lies. And, I would have missed that. Now, what happened to make the New York Times run a piece against someone you would think that they would be in favor of, because New York Times, let's just face it, they're a bit of a CCP cheerleader like so many of the other legacy media. But no, it was a good piece. So the official narrative, it's been corroded. So now we're in a real pickle here, because there was a rise of podcast voices to be the new trusted media. We are the news now. We are the media now. Remember that? But in comes the horrible assassination of Charlie Kirk, and everything goes crazy. And I'd say probably even goes back to the June Epstein file debacle, which I think for sure DOJ really screwed that one up in how they managed that. But see, now where we were going to trusted podcasters, which you should always check out their sources. Check out mine, always, please. Where do you now the podcasters are like going crazy. You got Candace Owens with her, and I'll say it, insane, unprovable, ridiculous, stupid theories. Okay? And she starts doing this thing where they're like, well, there are these planes in the air at the same time as this, and then she lets you fill in the blanks, and then you get married to that because you solved it as part of the mommy detectives or whatever she has over there. It's a common sales trick. It's a common sales trick. I think it was actually Bongino who cited this one sales trick the other day where they put a piece of 2 Legos on the table when you're interviewing, and then you put them together, and then you're more invested in the company or something like that. But the point is, it's like if I said to you, all right, guys, I've got Max Blumenthal, I've got the Grayzone. Now, I'm not saying anything, but at the same time they published this, Alexander Dugin was yelling about America. What do you think that means? Well, a lot of people would say, oh my God, they're working together to amplify the message. Well, we don't know that. Now, in this case here with this network, it's demonstrable. And there's other sources that I have that I'll put in the description to show that, where people have actually run the numbers and the connections, tweets going on at the exact same time. That's provable. Okay? But if I just gave you those 2 data points, or I just gave you a data point like, hey, I'm going to pick on... Well, you stepped into it, so not Roscoe. Roscoe, welcome. I'm going to pick on this other person. Where'd they go? Wow, lots of comments already. Guys, I'll take a break in a second to answer comments. Yeah, I'm going to pick on... All right, so let's say I can pick on Eldrin. Ljrrn. So let's say Eldrin, I see that Eldrin is shooting a video, I don't know, at the CPAC convention. Okay? And then, at the CPAC convention, fictitiously, and this is not to insinuate anything, this is just as an example, a bomb goes off. And then I say to you, well, look, I pulled all of L's videos from YouTube, and it looks like that person was at CPAC at the same time those bombs went off, and then they were on my site, on my show, saying that they were with this group of influencers. What do you think that means? That could mean a lot of things. There's a ton of people at CPAC. L might just be there reporting the news. But because the human mind needs to figure things out, you'll fill in those blanks, usually with the worst case scenario. Well, L must be the bomber. Well, no, that could be true, but it hasn't been investigated yet. Well, what these other podcasters like Candace, what they do is you put it together, you get the feedback. She's like, yes, exactly, mommy detectives, and they figured this out for me. And she's always tasking them, you might notice this. So now they're engaged. Now they're part of it. Now this is their baby too. And that's why people so viciously support these crazy investigations, because they're not investigations. It's just sales tactics gone wild. It's like when you try to sell a contract, you want the prospective client to reiterate the deliverables you just read at the beginning of the meeting as if they're his idea. So you want to say, well, we want to influence this potential customer base by instituting a lot of colors and sounds and rhythms. And then later on, you say, sir, what do you think? It's like 1 hour. What do you think of, what other things might you add? Because I want to make sure you're pleased on this, and we're giving you what you want before you even consider signing this. And he's going to remember what you just said. Well, I think I like what you said about the sounds and the colors. I would even add maybe a rhythmic type of piece to it. And you're like, that's a great idea. 9 times out of 10, he's signing that contract because he feels like he helped form it and he's part of it now. He's invested in it. That's how these things spread. Is all of these people in this network I showed you create these narratives that are Lego piece, Lego piece, Lego piece, space, 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 and then you figure it out. And then when you figure it out, you're usually the person on X saying, man, I was saying that a year ago. I was saying that here and here and here. I said that first. You're invested in this, but you're not going to go against it because you said it. So how do you break that? Well, we'll get into that another time, but this is just the same way they all operate. Okay, so that's, about the narratives and everything like this. So all of these people, the axis of resistance is what they're called. They all support the Bashar Assad government. They all often portrayed as a victim of Western-backed regime change rather than focusing on its internal repression. And again, prove me wrong, but you can find the court cases related to the suppliers of the chemicals. A lot of them came out of Russia. It's pretty closed door on that, but people still fight it. Iran as resisting imperialism. Well, no. Iran is imperialistic, and they want to be the imperial power in the Middle East. They've pretty much said it. If they get nuclear weapons, which some claim they weren't trying to make, which is bonkers because we were negotiating with them not to make those before we hit them in June. They wouldn't be negotiating if they didn't have them. Okay, or were planning on making them. So to say they're resisting imperialism, I guess if you consider the U.S. imperialists and they're fighting back against us, sure. But that's only half the story. They're resisting imperialism that seeks to take them out of power, which will actually make the region a lot safer and probably save a lot of Iranians. Okay. But again, that's my researched opinion. That's beside the point for what we're talking about. On Russia, especially in Ukraine, framing NATO expansion as Western actions as provocative. I kind of agree. And see, that's the danger of the anti-imperialists. Let's talk about Ukraine. Okay. How did Russia become so popular on the right? Well, the main reason Russia became popular with conservatives is because the left, who used to love Russia, don't forget, they used to invite him to like Hollywood and stuff, Putin to Hollywood. We used to train under Clinton. We'd have special forces training with Spetsnaz. Yes, this really happened up until like 99. But then all of a sudden, the Democrats started Russiagate, and Russia stole the election. That's how Donald Trump got in the first time. That's been proven to be false. But that's when Russia became the big enemy. Okay, Russia was not really anything anyone was thinking about. That's why I was surprised when all of a sudden Russia was bad, and I was like, what's happening? And this is like, 2014, 15, 16, leading up to probably 2015, the most leading up to the first election of Donald Trump. So that's what happens is like we go into COVID, Ukraine starts. It's in large, like we're entering that war. We're entering our money and lots of it into that conflict at a time when the economy was beyond bad. Okay, beyond bad. Biden was in charge. He was, God knows doing what in his diaper, and we're just watching the Democrats go wild spending money on DEI programs, and then we get this, Zelensky over there, and he's saying, send me more money, send me more money. We're watching the Europeans barely sending anything, and we're like, this is BS, not our conflict. And in my opinion, it's really not our conflict. We should have never intervened. And had we not intervened and provided so much, who knows what happened, but I don't see the Russians as rolling over Europe if Ukraine's been able to hold them back for so long. You see what I mean? I'm not saying they don't want to. They do have a key vision of this Eurasian dominance. I just don't think it's possible, but it's not probable. Okay, but even I fell into this. Like all of a sudden, it's like, well, these guys, these woke lefties, love Ukraine, and to this day, I don't agree with anything Ukraine says. But I found myself going, I mean, I don't really like the Russians, but if I had to pick one, I'd pick them over Ukraine. And then you see what's happening on the Russia side. They got the big dudes on the recruiting video, on the U.S. Army video. They have the girl with the two moms and the cartoon. And we're seeing a more manly, more macho, more warrior ethos coming out of the Russian messaging, which is real. I mean, these guys are pretty tough. I've worked with Russian soldiers. I like them. A lot of friends in Russia that I really like. But they're some tough dudes in their military. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, we have tough dudes in ours, of course, as well. But we're sitting there and we're watching this and we're seeing Putin. We're hearing a lot of people say, well, yeah, Putin might be a bad guy, but at least he's a nationalist. At least he takes care of his country. Depends how you define that. But the point is, a lot of MAGA said, yeah, you know what? We're probably going to lose the next one anyways because the Democrats are going to steal it. That means we're going to be under this thumb forever. Why not align with the Russians? And you see, that's where the MAGA communism and everything started, and these leanings of conservatives towards this multipolar world. The Russians were selling a more macho version of communism disguised as nationalism. And a lot of people, myself included for a short time, kind of bought into it. Okay, so that's how they defend Russia. It's like a lot of things you probably agree with, and that's what makes it so dangerous. It's like you agree with one thing, but then they want you to agree with everything else. They defend China, okay? They say they like to say it's the new Cold War. Another thing they like to say is the Uyghur genocide, which has been pretty much a genocide. The atrocities, the live human organ harvesting, has been even investigated and largely confirmed by UN reports forever. You'll find people like Kim Iversen denying that happened, saying, well, China had to lock them down because they were committing terrorist acts in China, the Uyghurs, who are like the ethnic Arabs. So they totally deny that. But when you say, yeah, but what about the fact that there's hundreds, if not close to thousands, of ready to rock organ hospitals throughout China? They even have express lanes. I've seen them when I went to China for organ delivery. How do you explain that? Like, where are these organs coming from? How can they produce an organ within hours sometimes when your body rejects one? That's impossible unless you're taking it from live people. Okay, the Uyghurs are Muslim. Who's not speaking out against the Uyghurs? The Muslim world. Nothing from Saudi, nothing from the Emiratis, nothing. Okay, they never speak out against it, or I've never seen it. And you got to wonder why. Well, maybe it's because they're the customers. Not all of them, but the people with the money. And think about it. Why Uyghurs? Well, you need halal organs. That's the thing. And that's I've got some, like Jan Jekelnik just wrote a great book on this. You could go to Epic Times, go to Seth Holhouse, who does Man in America. He's talked about this at length. He interviewed a doctor that was part of it. Definitely check that out. But they'll never talk about that. They'll turn the conversation from that. And a lot of the pro-China in this network comes from people who belong to the Schiller Institute, which is part of the larger LaRouche network. Okay. Venezuela, Cuba, and other leftist Latin American governments, they never, ever, ever talk bad about them. They never say anything about Chavez. They never say anything bad about Canel, the current president, or the Castros. But you got Blumenthal, who's over there shaking hands with not Maduro, but the guy that came for Chavez. No, actually Maduro. But you never see them saying anything bad about them because these are the people in the network that they want to protect. All these countries, in some part, represent the multipolar world that is largely pushed by the Russians. okay, with the Chinese right alongside, happy to do it. They accuse corporate Western media of propaganda, which again, rightfully so. But I always say you're only as good or bad as your last article. You might screw up an article, you might lie for 5 years, but then you might be the New York Times and produce that one article that's really good. Doesn't mean the New York Times is good. It means, well, you can trust it because you can check the sources yourself. You can't trust anyone. You can't trust people to give you the truth. You got to make sure they're giving you the truth. But even the National Enquirer in the past has run some stories that were like kind of buried in among Bat Boy and, God knows whatever else. And you're like, wow, how about that? Okay. Skepticism, we talked about that. Okay. Additional common traits. Anti-war, anti-interventionist status. We talked about this. Anti-war, Consortium News, Mint Press, Grayzone exemplify this. They also talk about, they identify as socialist or Marxist influenced, but to be quite honest with you, Marxists hate people like Max Blumenthal because they're like, he's not a Marxist, he's, something else entirely. They label the parts of this network as campist, seeing the world in pro-anti-U.S. camps, or overly defensive of Russia, China, Syrian, and Iran. This is coming from Marxists. That's how they view these people. And that's why I said anti-imperialist, because I can't say left or right with these people. Platforming and cross-promotion. Now, this is the important point. This is where, the Tucker Carlsons come in. Figures frequently appear on each other's shows, podcasts. We saw that with Galloway, Grayzone, Jimmy Dore, Judge Napolitano's another one, Kim Iversen, the list goes on, Mint Press. They contribute to overlapping outlets. Now you have this whole new thing that's kind of formed with Tucker Carlson because he aligns with all of these people. Okay, and a lot of his talking points literally are Russian and Chinese talking points these days. But where Tucker comes in, and I've noticed this, is he's kind of like an incubator. Like you take someone like Ian Carroll, who's well known in the Candace circles, and then you get him onto Tucker, and his audience just explodes. Now he's been nationally launched. And you see Tucker just keeps doing that. He brings them in. They're a little, decent size, but not full size. And he brings them in and hits his little Tucker influence button, and boom, they're a big star. Boom, they're a big star. It's like a conveyor belt. Okay, George Galloway, to a lesser degree, does the same thing. Jimmy Dore, to a lesser degree, does the same thing. Okay, but that's what I've seen now is they send them to Tucker to amplify them and then create bigger voices as part of this ongoing and growing network. Alex Jones does this too. He has the Hajj Twins on now. The Hajj Twins have been blown out of the water as totally anti-U.S. now. Alex Jones brings them on, and he's giving them a place to stay. We saw this with Rift TV's Elijah Schaffer. Rift TV pretty much was shut down. I think it might still be. But then all of a sudden, someone's platforming him because now he's bouncing around CPAC, or maybe someone's not and he just spent his own money. I don't know. But that's kind of like the system that you see. So that's a new part of this network that is not in this narrative, but you can see it for yourself. Defense of whistleblowers and critics of empire. Strong support for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. I don't have an opinion on Assange I believe he's passed. Opposition to censorship and dissenting voices. I will say this. I have a big problem with anyone who leaks information from our country because they're putting us in danger, or if they're not putting lives in danger, which almost always ends in lives being in danger, they are putting infrastructure or intel infrastructure in danger, which means we have to rebuild it to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. And these people that are being anti-establishment by blowing the lid off things, all they're doing is giving these imperialist governments a chance to spend more money on a new system because they have to redo it. Like with Edward Snowden, the stuff he revealed, pretty widely known, but then it was universally known. And all of these main lines, all these intel broadcast connections underwater near Brazil, everything like that, that stuff had to all be redone, and we all paid for it. And that's the problem I have with them. Edward Snowden, of course, I have a big problem with him because he was working up at the NSA for Booz Allen Hamilton. At the time, I was with Booz Allen Hamilton, which I can't say the client, but you could guess who it was. I didn't know him, but I will say this. He was a contractor. Okay, if he was that patriotic, why did he go for the job that gives you more money and you're beholden to a private company like Booz Allen Hamilton? Okay, I'm not saying I was any less patriotic, but yeah, if they're going to pay me 25% more than the GS employees, I'm going to take it. Okay, but he then went to Hong Kong first, and then he went to Russia. What does that tell you? Okay, I don't see him as a hero. I never did, and I never will, because he had a clearance. He, was trusted with key information, important information. There is nothing heroic about only knowing a part of the picture as an analyst and just leaking it to someone. Because, the American public might say, oh my God, that's terrible. But you know what our enemies are doing? They're like, oh, okay, let's shift all our operations this way so they can't see us coming. I mean, that's what it does. People forget in today's day and age that, the intelligence community, granted, has had their missteps and has allegedly done really bad things and maybe have provably done bad things. But what you never see is the successes. And you never will. And that is the tragedy of it. That's a tragedy of being in the cleared world, but you need to accept that when you go in. You will never get credit, okay, for any of the things you do. If you've never been in that world, and I have, you will never know how many times this country has been saved from devastation, actually saved from devastation. Sometimes multiple times a week, okay? You never see the successes. You only see the leaks and the failures or the missteps. So you have to remember that. I know everyone thinks we are investing all this money in the intel community so the deep state can control people. First of all, no one wants to control a ton of people. They might want to get rid of them, but managing 300, just ask Xi Jinping. You think he wants to control 1.8 billion Chinese or whatever the number is? No, he'd probably like to kill half of them, so he had to control less because they got to manage those. But if you think for a second that the intel community and the intel mission is only there to take away your rights, well then ask yourself this: which rights have you lost to the shadowy government? Have you lost any? Because we're talking right now. Have you lost privacy? Sure. But whose fault is that? Well, that's called technological evolution. Okay? Whose fault is that? That's all our fault after 9/11 when we said, go get them. Do what you got to do. You want FISA warrants? Go ahead. Everyone was saying that. So the point is, these people attack the intel community, and that's super easy to do because the intel community can never come out and say, well, wait a minute, we've done this, this, and this. No, of course not, because the threat is always there. The threat is like holding a beach ball underwater in 2 feet of ocean water. If you let go of it, it pops back up. It's a constant threat, and people just don't seem to understand this. And a lot of you do. So again, I'm not saying love or trust the intel community. I am saying, before you try to dismantle or condemn them, get the whole story as much as you can. And I can guarantee you none of these people have the whole story. None of these people have ever held a clearance. Joe Kent has, but he's not yet officially in here. Scott Ritter has, but, we know how that ended. He couldn't be trusted with it, apparently. So that's the thing. It's most of the people who are talking about things as influencers have no idea. Candace Owens has never held an official position in the U.S. government. None of these people have. Tucker Carlson hasn't. Okay? His daddy might have, but he didn't. He actually didn't get selected for CIA. His words, not mine. Okay? And that's the thing. So, yeah, you could research a lot, but you really don't know because there are things that are classified that you'll never know. Same thing with criminal investigations. Same thing with the trial of, Tyler Robinson. There's a lot out there, but having worked murder investigations as a private detective for defense teams, you're not seeing a fraction of it. You're not seeing the boxes and boxes of printed out affidavits from everyone there that they could get an affidavit from, and the prosecution prints it out, so then the defense has to actually go through the trouble of reading it, storing it. They make it as difficult as they can for them. So, just had some interlopers here. Can you take the love? Take him with you. And my wife calling the dog away. Thanks. But you just don't know. So everyone that another key thing about this network, and probably a lot of people you see interact with every day on the internet, they always say they know, or they say I trust this person because I know because, and they never have sources. It's not bad to say you don't trust Joe Kent, regardless of how many awards he has or how honorably he served the country. That's not even under attack, or that's beyond reproach. No one ever is saying he's a fake hero. But today, based on your actions today, that doesn't matter. It doesn't make you any more or less trustworthy. What you just did right now makes you trustworthy or not. And like I like to say, you're as trustworthy as your last kept promise. Doesn't matter what you've done. Okay? And that's just the fact. And look, anyone who's a veteran like I am, and there's a lot of them out there, they'll be the first to tell you, no, I don't trust every veteran. I don't care if they went to combat. Of course not. There's, like any large population of any sector of our society, there's good and bad. You trust people one at a time. All right. So that is the network here, and then we can go into the pro-Syria stance. We will in a second, but that's when we get into the second part of this, which may have to be tomorrow because I do want to take your comments. Okay, so in summary, the network that we're talking about, you will find behind all of them are pro-Joe Kent. He can do no wrong. And of course he can. He's human. All of them are they're not only anti-Iran strikes, they're anti the other Iran strikes, they're anti-Libya intervention, they're anti-Cuba intervention, they're anti-taking Maduro in his silk pajamas out of his bed, which is freaking hilarious. They're anti-anything that we do. Anything that we do, especially when it's preemptive, they're against. And it all started with Syria for the large part. For most of these people. But let me take some comments first. And Brian, I just want to thank Brian Fura because I jumped into this running and he slowed me down. He's like, what are we talking about? Give me a thesis. What's the gist? Yeah, so the U.S. is completely innocent. No, look, no country is completely innocent. Okay, but I look at the world as like kind of like being in prison, sort of like you gotta be with someone. You can't be on an island. And this country, historically, if you look at every other country in the world, has done the best by its citizens. Completely. I know someone's gonna say Sweden, Norway, whatever. But have they? I mean, have they? Talk to them. Because right now they're all facing a zombie economy because so many people have retired and are collecting 1, 2, and 3 government paychecks, but no one's producing. So have they? But I think by and large, given the size of our country, the diversity of our country, the diversity of our multi-climate environment, we're doing pretty damn good. Okay, we're talking right now. The lights aren't out. We don't have an infrastructure like Cuba, which was not affected by Trump's sanctions. It was affected by the fact that the Cuban government put nothing into that infrastructure. That's why there's all those old cars there. There's no infrastructure. And they did have plenty of money coming in from the Russians and especially the Chinese, but it never went to the people. We have that. We have lights at work. I go up north in my very red county in New York, and the lights there, they're a little worse. They go out all the time. Not saying it's because we're Republicans. I'm just saying I do notice that the blue counties get turned on before the red counties do after every storm. They have the map. Okay, sorry, go ahead. So no, U.S. isn't completely innocent, but it doesn't matter. Like, it matters, like, what we're doing now, what is the long-term effect of it? Is it something that will help? Will we be better off for this? Yes, in my opinion, we will. Now, your opinion might be different because you might define better off differently than I do. But what I see as better off is not having Iran. I'd like to see them completely out of the oil industry, because they have used that oil money and income to fund these terrorist groups. And oh, by the way, for those that think they weren't getting ready to make more nukes after we bombed them, they're still going. Remember, a lot of their refinement was going on in Venezuela. And that's in a 2012 congressional record where there was a whole joint task force set up to address this issue. They were sending nuclear physicists to Venezuela to refine uranium in Venezuela. And they had a joint contract with the Venezuelans, the Iranians did, where they were building missile bases on the Colombian-Venezuelan border in 2012 that could host intermediate-range missiles capable of reaching the southern United States. Okay? And they were also, well, we'll get into the oil thing. That's fascinating, but that's a whole nother show. But so, yeah, and here's the other thing. Unlike what Joe Kent said, okay, we don't just rely on the Israelis for our intel. Of course we don't. We never have. There's so many capabilities that can pick up radiation. We have, the Israelis do have the strongest human intelligence in the area, for sure. But keep in mind, the Israelis have given us intelligence for other areas of the world. So have the Germans, so have the Saudis, so have the Israelis given intel to the Qataris. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that, but they share intel too. Israel and Jordan have shared infrastructure like electricity, water, everything like that. Like, there's a lot more to this than just like this New Jersey-sized country is somehow controlling the U.S., which is just ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense to me. So yeah, unlike what he says, we're not. It's not like, Joe Kent wants to paint this picture of the Israeli officials just walk right in and they tell us the intel and everyone just goes with it. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay, it certainly doesn't work that way. Keep in mind, Venezuela was planned since 2020. This Iran thing has been planned since the first term. Okay, it's these courses of action are tabletopped in war games in the Pentagon months before for almost every potential conflict in the world. And here's another thing that I need you to understand about the NCTC. It's a fusion center. It's one of like 5 centers that fall under the ODNI. But it's not collecting. It doesn't have collection assets. It certainly has no investigative capability or authority. You can see that on their site. Seeing if I have that up right now. Okay, so when Joe Kent's like, oh, they blocked me from investigating the Charlie... No, investigating? What are you talking about? There's no investigative authority at the NCTC. Think of it this way. If Levi's... And I don't want to disrespect anyone at the NCTC, but I was there, not at the NCTC, but in the intel community right down the road when NCTC first got set up. Okay, and I was like, why do we need another fusion center? But they wanted to cut down the pipelines that were seen after 9/11 about not info sharing. I mean, keep in mind the DNI came after 9/11, and from the DNI sprung the NCTC and the several other centers. But basically, it's a good idea because we have a line between law enforcement and the intel community generally. The only liaison between law enforcement and the intel community has previously been the FBI. That's largely why the FBI is in the intel community. So that way, if there's a court case regarding an operation, a CIA person whose identity is kind of protected can't be subpoenaed. Okay, so that's why we have the FBI. FBI is also there too for hostage situations. That's their jurisdiction. And they're also there for, things like if child pornography shows up on a hard drive from a terrorist site, that's the FBI's jurisdiction. Okay, or if an American shows up, like Tucker Carlson, on communications that we're collecting on as a country, they go to the FBI because the intel community can't legally listen to or process that information. Okay, so you have to have the FBI there. And that brings up another point. When Tucker Carlson was saying in his very nervous sounding thing about getting investigated by the CIA, that's false. The CIA doesn't investigate. They collect on foreign targets. I know a lot of you want to think, well, that's not true. I know the CIA is operating in the U.S. Well, if they are, I've never heard of it. Okay? I've heard of the FBI doing it. I've heard a lot of people that used to be in the CIA formed things like, the McChrystal Group, the Chertoff Group, Ridge Consulting. And they're going to operate with the CIA-like pattern. Okay, but there are so many lawyers at the CIA. I don't know how they would squeeze an entire op, out the window without it going through a million legal hurdles. Call me Pollyanna if you want, but I know that area. And don't trust me, just check out my LinkedIn, but you may have to make some connections because I can't legally breach the NDAs between the companies I work for and their clients. But the point is, that's why the FBI is there. So in Tucker's little whiny thing about getting investigated by the CIA, no, what probably happened, and this is old news by now, is he admittedly was talking to Iranian officials. We're getting ready for war. The CIA, probably via the NSA, because CIA doesn't really do SIGINT. They usually outsource it to the NSA. Tucker was picked up. They're gonna know it's him because they're gonna identify him immediately by his phone number if they don't know his name. And Tucker said, and the reason the intelligence community passes these things to the FBI and law enforcement is to embarrass us. Well, the FBI is part of the intelligence community. So no one's passing anything outside of the intelligence community. It's going to the proper authority within the intelligence community to not violate Tucker Carlson's rights. So this is something they all do. They kind of, everything's omission. Like they just tell you the most damning things about the thing they want you to hate the most. And that's why it's up to you to really go deep on these things and flesh it out. Take their statements and say, yeah, but they didn't say this, they didn't say this, they didn't say this. Joe Kent never said, it's not even in our purview or our authority or the scope of our duties to investigate anything. Anything. They share intel across agencies. That's what they do. So, is it a lie? No, I mean, someone, obviously, if he said, I'm ready, send me in, coach, I want to go investigate this murder, someone probably said, well, you can't because you're not allowed to, it's illegal. There's a million constitutional potential violations that would open up. I mean, just imagine if the NCTC was included on every domestic crime. You want to talk about breaking down the line between the intel community and your privacy and your constitutional rights? Gone. But that's what they do, is they paint this picture, and this picture is painted in a almost story-like thing. Like, you have this image now of Joe Kent going in. I mean, the name of his book is Send Me. So you have this image of him going in, saying, I just got to get in there. I know there's intel there. And it's like, even if he thought there was really intel there that had a foreign nexus, like he says, he still doesn't investigate. It's just the only thing they could do at that point is put out a request that goes through, the proper channels saying, hey, local police, if anything comes up about these countries, send it to Point of Contact A. It'll make its way to the NCTC, so then they can process it against foreign intelligence. That's it. That's their job. Okay, and then they'll disseminate that out if there is, which will go through the channels of scrubbing it for sources and methods and everything like that. That's just standard. And it's all on the website at the NCTC. And it's all in the statutes and the laws and regulations that govern the OD&I as a whole and the NCTC as its sub, or as one of its sub-centers. All right, more comments. So the point is, that is a common thing. Lies through omission or distraction, I guess. Brian, I like Marjorie. Boo hiss. I don't like her anymore. And I'm going to dedicate an entire episode to why. Okay, because I can't find the tweet, but like she had reached out to Sean Ryan. I think it was supposed to be a DM, and no, I can't prove it because I can't find the damn tweet where she said, "Hey," it was when he first said he was done with Donald Trump, and then she said, "Hey, call me," and he said, "I will after the live," and I can't find the tweet. I should have never mentioned it. I don't. You can like her all you want. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I like most of the actual enemies I've met. If we're talking about like foreign enemies, this one podcaster, I won't name his name, but me and him got into it, but I still think he's funny as hell. So you can like him, but you need to know what's going on, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And, just go and cross-check her, Roscoe, and welcome back, by the way, but Roscoe, check her against this network of people and look at what she's really saying. Oh, and guys, let me back up really quick here. What do I think the entire plan is? Why are they doing this? Here's what I think. I think on the conservative, if you could call them that, on this side, they want to kill the midterms. You've heard Candace saying it. You've heard Jimmy Dore, who says it every time he appears. Tucker Carlson hints at. So many of them say, "What's it matter? I don't care about your midterms. People shouldn't vote because it doesn't make a difference." You're just feeding into the same system. A vote for anyone is a vote for Israel. They're trying to get you not to vote. But you know who's not going to abstain from voting? The Democrats. So what happens then? I think this group thinks it'll clear the path because obviously they're going to impeach Donald Trump if the Democrats get the House. They've pretty much said it. We've seen the weakness of the GOP. They will cave. They may not get enough votes to block it. Then Donald Trump's out. All these policies are gone. And even if they don't get to impeach him, they control the purse strings. And unlike the Republicans, who have just been the Rhino Republicans, whatever you want to the GOP, the old guard, whatever, the grand old party. They've been so weak, they control the purse and they control the power, and they're scared to use it to block so many things. Why are we even having a debate about the SAVE Act? Or why were we? Because they're scared to use their power because they're probably corrupt or bought off or horse trading. Who knows? Okay, but the Democrats are not scared to use their power, and that scares the hell out of me. So while this group here might think they're clearing the path, some of them, a lot of them, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because then the Dems will take out, the president, and then they can run their own person. Because I think they're going on the belief that the Democrats can't possibly win another presidential election. I think that's idiotic and foolish because who says they won the last one? If you believe they cheated on the last one, what makes you think they're not going to do it again, except now they control everything? And there's no Donald Trump in the way to stop it. And there's no unified MAGA, because everyone's all over the place talking about things that don't matter or at each other's throats. There's nothing to stop them. So these people in this graph who think they've got this, they think they're playing chess. They're playing checkers against people playing chess. Because once the Democrats get that power, they are not letting it go. Okay, and just like I've talked about in 1948 Czechoslovakia, they're going to use that power to pick off their enemies officially and then pick us off. I guarantee if they get the House, we're going to see censorship beyond belief, open borders like you can't believe. Okay, and things like Rumble and X are probably going to be shut down pending investigation. It's going to be nuts. And that's coming right up. So all these people, whether they're useful idiots or fellow travelers, whether they're witting or unwitting, when they're calling for you not to vote in the midterms, they are doing exactly what the Democrats, who are now hijacked by actual socialist communists, the DSA, they are doing exactly what the left wants them to do. And if the left gets power, that is music to the CCP's ears, as well as all the enemies we're currently in conflicts with, we're currently at odds with. That is music to the ears of our enemies because, as we've seen, they control the Democrats. All right, so these people who want you to, not trust anything, they're pretty much telling you to give up your way of living because it will be gone. And I don't think that's hyperbole. If the Democrats take the House in the midterms, guys, it's game over. I don't see us coming back from that. These morons, the ones that actually are morons, they think they're going to be able to control those, steer it through the rapids and make it to a 2028 win. They're not. Okay? And the Democrats know that. They just need the midterms. That's it. And then they can run anyone they want, and who are you to oppose it? This is why they're fighting the SAVE Act so much. Okay? They're not so worried about the midterms. Okay? Well, they are worried about the midterms. I'm sorry. They are worried about the midterms because this is the key thing to grab power. If the Democrats grab power, you might as well be handing that power to all of our enemies: Russia, China, Iran, okay, Syria, Assad, Syria, and this current guy. The ISIS-run Syria will turn on us in a heartbeat if we show weakness, or if we show we're not in control anymore. So that's where we're at. Again, that's what these people are trying to lead us to. Now, here's the good news. Outside of X and social media, the polls stand. Most conservatives, a large majority, are in favor of this. It's just important that you stay the course and that you know what's important and you're researching and you're not listening to anyone. I'm here to give you information. You're going to have all these links. I don't care if you prove me wrong, whatever. I hope you'll spend your time on identifying the threat, identifying what's really important. Not voting for the midterms to teach someone a lesson, thus giving up literally your country, or voting in the midterms and then still having a voice to say you all suck and maybe running for office yourself and changing things. Okay, but I hope you take this information to educate yourself and others if you don't already know it. I'm not here to get you to, my way of thinking. I'm not here to sell you my opinion on anything. I'm here to show you what I see is happening. Use it for what you will, okay? But at least if you agree with this, like El Jarem said earlier, this person who I'm glad they're here, but they might use it to not do anything different or to try to prove everyone wrong. That's fine, but at least they're doing it with some sourcing. Okay, Roscoe, I got another anti-Westerner for you, Brian. Yes, Chris Hedges, yes. I didn't get to add him to this, but big time. And we'll talk about Chris Hedges, definitely. Also, there's another one, I can't remember his name, but he popped up on my radar the other day. You're welcome, I'm from them. See, this is a great example. These people, L being apparently one of them, they tell you who they are. And people, I don't know what's wrong with I'll say a lot of conservatives. And even like on the left, the socialists, they say who they are. And those left-wing voters are like, oh, they don't mean it. Yes, they do. Thank you, El. El's given me some great examples. They're compromise. You can have them touting party line or you expose them. Yeah, exactly. And what do you do by exposing them? That brings up another question. What do you do with all this information? How do you make it actionable? Well, we go back to the pillars. Okay, so if you want to really do something to fight this kind of messaging, go after those pillars I mentioned. If their narrative is 9/11 was a hoax and it was a bunch of Israelis and there's a Syrian architect that can prove it, right? You guys all heard that? Show them where they're wrong. Do your own investigation. Why let them control the narrative? If you start chipping away at their pillars, all the other arguments that they're resting on top of those fall apart and they look like idiots. To me, they look like idiots already, but it makes it a lot easier. If you are just reacting to the current thing they're talking about, saying, no, that's not true, we're winning the Iran war. They're like, no, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. That's a waste of time. But if you can undermine their very credibility, especially these big clusters, which is not hard to do because all of their sourcing is conjecture, it's anecdotal at best, because none of them have clearances, okay? And none of them are getting cleared information from leaks. They're just not. It's very easy to disprove, but the other thing you got to do is we have to work together. Like, I'm reaching out to other podcasters. I don't make money on this. I honestly do this because I like doing it, and I like sharing what I know. This is not my job. And it's certainly not how my wife makes money. I mean, she's got books, she's a writer, she's got speaking gigs. She does the same thing on different subjects. But I'll tell you this, like, what do you do with it? Well, we have to work with other podcasters. We have to make a network like they have, where we are feeding each other's websites. I should be ending this website, and if some of the podcasters, some have reached back to me, and there's a nice new group of people coming up that they're not calling themselves MAGA or conservatives. They're just like me. They're saying, this is what's happening, take it or leave it. But we should all be cross-promoting each other's stuff like these people do. I see the problem with a lot of people just getting into the media space is they don't realize it is a network. It is an ecosystem. It's not a solo show. No one's ever going to be a star. No one's ever going to be a star. And that's okay. You can still make money. You can still be a star to a smaller audience, but there are no national stars anymore except for like our president and a couple other people. But the point is, depends why you're doing this. If you want to be the only one and the only person in the room that knows things, that's great, but you don't know everything. And so I'm trying to get more and more of these podcasters to work together so we can amplify each other's stuff. You know, the real truth tellers, the people really digging in, showing receipts, everything like that. And that's what we have to do. This is not only some enemy intelligence here, but this is a good model. Okay, this is how you own the message, is exactly what these people are doing. Okay, I'll give credit where credit's due. What they're doing is working because a lot of people are buying into it, and it's a big problem. Okay, so Rosca says, I noticed Jimmy Dore became increasingly more wackadoodle in his claims. Well, don't forget, Jimmy Dore comes from the Young Turks. So I don't think a lot of people know that. He started with the Young Turks, I understand. And he's for a long time, he's always had this anti-imperialist message. He's always been anti-everything. I just forgot that, I guess. Like, I knew his name, but like when COVID started and everything, like, we were all focused on one thing. And that's how a lot of these people, the Grayzone, that's how a lot of them got the trust of the non-left, okay? Is they're like, oh, Blumenthal, he was at Defeat the Mandates. I think he was at Defeat the Mandates when my wife was out there in LA. And they're like, oh, he's good. He was out there. He must be one of us. No. Just because they're good for one battle does not make them good for the whole war. Okay? They are on a different side. They have a different agenda. Kim Iversen has a different agenda. Jimmy Dore has a different agenda. Clearly, Tucker Carlson, I don't think he has an agenda. I think he has a price. Because I can't find an agenda. It shifts like the wind, which is usually indicative of mercenary messaging. So, but the thing is, just because someone was good in that battle doesn't mean they're good in this one. I say it to death, but if that was the case, we'd still be allies with Russia and China from World War II. So people have to keep doing the due diligence on who they have on their show. And then you won't be surprised when the message goes really awry. And I've seen some of these podcasters like platform Blumenthal, and Blumenthal's like, yeah, but the U.S. this, and the U.S. bad, the U.S. this, and what about the good people, the good government of Venezuela, blah, blah, I'm paraphrasing. And I'll see the podcast like, oh, how about that? We're going to cut to commercial because they weren't expecting that. I thought he was on our side. Well, no, they're not on your side. Okay? So always do your due diligence. All right. I want to ask you a question. Nick Fuentes, I don't think he's paid by anybody, but he has already Obama arrow reviews about, I think he's paid by somebody. I mean, I'm sorry, but you can't. I mean, look, this production, which is way lower, key than his, I mean, quality, it takes money, it takes time, You can rant only so long, but you have to constantly be researching. And he doesn't just rant, he knows what he's doing. And I'm sorry, but that kind of reach, it's organic to a point. It's not sustainable, and his has sustained. Do I have a funding stream identified for him? No, he's kind of last on my list because he does seem to like jump all over the place. But I think it's my belief that he's definitely funded or... he's got some backing because I'm sorry, but you're just not doing that as much as he's doing it, and that quality of a production on your own. Maybe you are, but I mean, and we'll see. Maybe he's not. I don't know. Admittedly, I haven't looked into it. I will say that he is. We've seen him with Alexander Dugin in Russia, and who retweets most of his stuff, so that is not necessarily evidence, but it's something to keep an eye on, is the Russia-Fuentes connection. It exists. I don't know if it's a long and lasting connection or a continued connection. And I'm sure there's people out there who've researched Fuentes, and some of the things I agree with, like what he was saying about like the bots the other day. Totally agree with him. Okay, but I don't have to, I can agree with some things and not get behind someone. You see what I mean? Like, I agree with nationalism. Hitler agreed with nationalism. I don't agree with Hitler, but I agree with nationalism. These people will try to say, oh, you agree with this, so you must agree with this. You saw it with antiwar.com there when they said, oh, you like Hegseth, oh, you like Bongino, who's a government official, so you trust Fauci. Like, these are communist arguments. Like, they're so boring. They're so old. They're in most Kafka novels. It's just, it's kind of like second grade stuff, in the world of propaganda. But be on the lookout for those things. All right, I gotta go soon because my battery's running. Oh, man, forgot to plug in the Mac. Let me plug this in so I don't lose you guys. Damn it. There we go. All right. If you have the Holy Spirit, this is not complicated. Well, I mean, Brian, I have the Holy Spirit, and I still find this complicated because I don't think God spoon feeds you the solutions. I think he gave us a brain and ability and breath in our lungs and ambition and IQ to figure these things out. Why he just doesn't give us the answers, I don't know. This life is not complicated, in my opinion. Yes, if you have the Holy Spirit, your belief system, whatever it is, but you have a waypoint. You have a goal in life, spiritually, everything else. I'm not a religious man, but I do believe in God. I am a Catholic. I do believe in Jesus Christ. My wife is Jewish. She does not. I'm okay with that. Different beliefs, I think we're all kind of correct. It's just somewhere in the middle we'll meet. But the point is, like, you need more than just the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, I think, is telling you to get into action, figure things out, go counter, whatever you want to do, protect your community. I said this on my wife's show today. I said, and I know you mean well, and you're probably agreeing with me. And I appreciate the comment. Actually, I like when people say things like that. It makes my day. I had a guy walk, really strange. I was walking through the airport the other day. We were heading to Houston for the rodeo a couple weeks ago, and I was in a really bad mood. I was tired. I wanted to go. It's my friends and everything, but I just didn't want to get on a plane because I hate getting on planes. And this guy kind of walks by, and he's kind of wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap, and a typical Brooklyn-looking guy over in, I guess we were in LaGuardia, and just out of the blue goes, "Hey, man, Jesus loves you." And I was like, "Thanks, man." So yes, I love these comments. Keep them coming. You're not here to make me feel good, but I want to do this. I would have given up long ago if I thought there wasn't a plan and a higher power. So I'm with you, but I do believe that we have to do more than just believe. We have to act, and I think it's my belief that's what God wants us to do. Communists never mention that. Where that China is bad. Okay, let me see. Communists never mentioned that where that China is bad because China has communism, America doesn't have communism. So that's why China. Yes, and I agree. Well, they never teach the history of communism in our schools, and I think that's by design because the teachers' union was formed, by communists. Okay, and way back when. And so when our education system went to federal control, I think that really, really messed it up because you just see like learning about our enemies as enemies has also morphed. My son was learning about World War II and the Japanese, but he wasn't learning about why we felt the need to bomb them, whether it was right or wrong. He wasn't learning about that. All he was getting was a victimology-centric education of the bombing of Japan without the context of the whole war. And I actually had to talk to his teacher. I'm like, what are you teaching here? What they're teaching in a lot of these schools is that we're the aggressors, that we're the bad guys. Like, apparently the world was Shangri-La until the U.S. showed up. And then it got worse when their little buddy Israel showed up. Like, the world was just, people playing harps on clouds before we showed up. And then it devolved into war and chaos. I mean, that's pretty much what they're teaching or want you to believe, and it's nuts. So I agree with you totally. And China has communism. Yeah, I mean, these are competing systems, but remember that you're not hearing from the Chinese people because the Chinese people have no voice. Don't believe it for a second that they do. They don't. Okay, because everything they say is monitored, even when they're abroad. Everything they do, everything they interact with, every person, every picture they take, that's downloaded upon re-entry into China. It's called I think it's called the National Strategic Intelligence Law. They have to do it. So don't believe it for a second that they have a voice and they like communism. The only people that like communism are the people at the top of communism, and no, the irony is not lost on me in that statement. So I totally agree with you, Kwan. Roscoe Fuentes is just a punk. No one that young should ever be handed a... I mean, yeah, I don't know if I totally agree with you, Roscoe, respectfully. I think we need to give more people the mic, especially on the conservative side of the aisle. I go to too many conservative things where it's really old people talking, with a few exceptions. And I'm not saying Fuentes is conservative, but what I'm saying, I think everyone who has the wherewithal and the ambition to grab a mic is going to get an audience, and so we should encourage more people to take the mic. And by the way, there is no way Fuentes has the money he does, is the age he is, and is celibate. He's gay or lying. I mean, if he's gay, he's gay. I care less about that. I care if he's lying. I don't know if he feels the way he does. I think his presentation is really good. And I don't think anyone can attack that. I don't agree with pretty much all of what he says, except for too many bots on X, which is a problem. But I think his presentation is really good. And, I think, like I never bring like if someone's gay or not into it. Like, I don't care. It's like there's so many major voices on both sides of the aisle that are gay. It doesn't matter to me. Okay? What matters to me is that if they're telling the truth. And that's the biggest thing that matters to me. So the gay thing, I don't care. If they're adults and they're with other adults, that's fine. Just like they don't want to know about my sex life, I don't need to know about theirs. That's totally fine with me. So I never let that skew my judgment. What matters to me is results and what they do. Not to make you feel bad, Roscoe. You could have your opinion too, of course. But yeah, that doesn't factor in for me. Putyatan family, tied to the Muscovy Imperial Russia. This is good stuff. Diplomat who negotiated 1958 treaty, and with Japan, any other eventual first name period. Okay, first name or time period. Give me more, or you can send it to me because I'd like to know where you're going with this because that's interesting. And I don't know a lot of Russian history, the history you're talking about. So. I kind of learned based on the target I'm looking at. Like I didn't know anything about Cuba. I just studied it for like 3 days before I presented on it. And I reached out to people to make sure I wasn't crazy. But this is how we learn. That's why I like investigating everything because you learn so much about a lot. So I'd love to learn more about that, Brian. I'm not on Facebook, or if I am, I don't know how to use it or get in anymore. But you can shoot me if you want to share more with me because I can't click on links here. You can certainly go to my email, which is right there, scrolling along right there. So any of you can send me info you want me to share or bring up, or if I miss something or you want to add to like this network here, that's more than please do. All right, a couple more comments. Hey, Donnie from Hawaii is back. Welcome back. Aloha. Darn, I'm late again. My fault. I was late and I didn't announce it. And by the way, I'm going to do this every Thursday for sure at 9 o'clock. Every Thursday, 9 o'clock, I will be here. I'll try to do 2 shows, but let's start there. 9 o'clock every Thursday. I'll be here. She says, aloha, darn, I'm late again. No worries. You're here now. As a younger country, we're doing far better than most. I agree. Totally. And thanks, by the way, for showing up. Good to see you again. Their lights come in first, not because they are blue, it's because they are... No. Even if you live in New York, that's BS. Total BS. There's a map. I'm sorry, Eldrin, but that's not true because I actually saw like I'm in Brooklyn right now, but up in the country, we're in like Columbia County. That's a big county. Okay, and then, but if you go to the other country, like there's you know the red counties from the blue counties based on the voting maps, but I've seen like some areas that are almost all red with tons of people come on last. I'll show it to you sometime. I don't want you but no, it's not because they're cities. I'm talking about the rural areas. There's a lot of rural areas in New York. We live in one of them part time. For the most part, they have the hospitals, priority infrastructure that need. And you could be right. Okay, when I made this discovery analytically, admittedly, I was a little pissed off. It was the middle of the summer. I was hot as hell. And so you could be right. I need to go back and research it. But at that time, in that highly emotional, pissed off state, that's the theory I came to. So you bring up a good point. I will challenge my belief of that and double check it. So that is fair. Okay, that is fair. I was emotionally compromised when I did that research. I will admit it. Moondance, I am not sure it's the left, but philanthropy networks. Oh, these aren't philanthropy networks. These are actual, and they definitely do it. You saw how many. I mean, think how many protests went away after USAID was crashed. There's tons of networks out there, and there's lots of other reporting we've done to talk about those, and a lot other people have done. But if you remind me, give me a nudge. You can shoot me a note on Rumble. I'll get it. We'll get you those sources. I'll get you those episodes with the sources. So we've seen what the Dems leftists are capable of. Oh yeah, no, they are evil. I always look. I look at it this way. It's like the evil Dems, because they're not all evil, but if I would say most of them, 99% or it's 100% really, are weak. Like they will lay down for evil because they will not stand up for themselves. They literally go, what's happening with the DSA hijack and the DNC for the last few years? They got the squad in there. They got Mandami. They're gaining more and more power every day. People discount the Democratic Socialists of America, who are not Democrats. They're communists. But they've gone from like 10,000 members to 100,000 members in a few short years. That's amazing. They've reached the biggest population in one organization of communists in the history of America. That's something people should pay attention to. All these dummies who are out there on X saying, oh, that's what you get in New York for voting for... I don't know anyone who voted for Mandami. I do know that it's New York. My friend Dexter Taylor's in jail right now because the judge in New York wouldn't let his lawyer argue Second Amendment on a Second Amendment case. Said the Second Amendment doesn't exist in my courtroom. That's New York, and that's why we work with Jimmy Wagner over there at the Donald J. Trump Brooklyn Club to try to get in the council seats and the school boards from the bottom up, because something's got to give in the city. And the thing is, it's like the people you see voting, it's not a majority of New Yorkers. A lot of New Yorkers' votes don't get counted. A lot of New Yorkers can't actually get to the voting places because they will intentionally make it inconvenient. I do believe, we have pending requests for data and investigations going into that last election where, like, the Republicans got blown out of the water. Like, one of our candidates that we were helping promote, Athena Clark, she literally was polling beyond anyone else. No one even heard of the other candidates. And they're saying she didn't get all but like a couple of votes. I mean, there's something wrong here. Okay, so yeah, but the Democrats just lay down. And I gotta say, like, the national Republicans did nothing to help the local elections here. It's like they've just written off any Republicans in New York. And so people like, God bless them, man, Jimmy Wagner and all the people that he's representing, they still they're at it again. They just keep going, and that's the warrior spirit right there. It's easy to sit in a flyover state and say, oh, you guys you're just giving up your city. No, we're not. We're still here. We're like the resistance, behind enemy lines. But don't discount, that we're going away, because people like Jimmy, and especially this huge population of second and third generation islanders and lots of immigrants, even from all sorts of places. They're not giving up anything. Like, my street in Brooklyn had huge signs, you can find it in my X, saying, "Get the hell out of this city, Mondami." They're pissed. In my opinion, I'd love your guys' thoughts on this. I think the boroughs should start seceding and isolate Manhattan. Take it away, take away its arms and its legs, okay, and let Manhattan try to do it on their own. I think we have to break up the power monopoly that greater NYC has become. And honestly, Brooklyn, Manhattan, it's like two different cities anyways. Just the night before last, I got into town. I came in from Salem, and I had to go way uptown to go meet my friends at Shen Yun, the cast of Shen Yun. They had a big documentary. It's the China Before Communism ballet. It's amazing. They had a big documentary that we were invited to. So I got up there, friends from the Epic Times, and we got into PJ Clark's, and we're all having dinner, and everyone's catching up again. And I looked at Jared, who's the MC for Shen Yun, and I said, honestly, when I come up here to Manhattan, it's like going to another state. It takes me an hour to get there by train or conveyance, depending on the time. And I'd rather just stay in Brooklyn. I'd be happy never leaving Brooklyn. It's like different cities. You go to, any other place too, like the Bronx, Queens. It's all like different cities. So I think they should secede. Could be a bad plan, but that's what I think. Got to break up the power of New York. So that way it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. All right, Noam Chomsky. I'm not, okay. Noam Chomsky. All right, Moon Dance. Context. Yes, I know who that is, but why are you putting it there? Because I want to address it if you have some context. So I'll come back to it if you put it up. Love your podcast. You give me so much of a different perspective. Well, thank you, S. Duckwo. I really appreciate that, and thank you for being here. I'm just putting out what I'm finding with the sources, so I'm glad it helps, definitely. And I'd love to hear your perspectives, too. You actually said, thank you, so I said, you're welcome, but okay. Well, I didn't see you're welcome, but thank you, and you're welcome back at you. And I look forward to your findings, definitely. Don't look now, but you're going to find yourself in the the gray zone, the real gray zone, where the truth is, because like they say, there's no good guys, there's no bad guys, there's just you and me, and we just disagree. A different perspective, and I learned so much. Thanks. I really, really appreciate that. It's one thing to be anti-oligarchic, but this is something else entirely. This is a total takedown. It is. And the thing is, and I want to read this because I was writing out this episode, but I want to read what I wrote, and some that I took, to be fair. But let me just read it off there was and this is actually from a Marxist group, but it looks like the person who wrote it was a Syrian. And this is, I think, really good points made in this, and it didn't end up on my slide, so let me find it here. But yeah, it's a good point. This is an ongoing thing that's been happening for a long time. And I want to read this to you guys because I found this very powerful. And I'm letting you know in advance, like, it looks like it's from a Marxist site, but I don't think the person that wrote it is an actual Marxist. It's probably the only place they could get it published. Just get to that. All right. There we go. Aha. Okay, so keep loving my show, even though I'm having these very awkward gaps of silence, but I will find this. The problem is I opened up 2 pages and I put research on both of them. All right. All right, that's okay. We'll do it another time. But the point that they were making, I'll just jump into it. The point that this person was making is that these people, these anti-imperialists, never, ever humanize the actual victims. It's consistent across all of them. they pander to the authoritarian, and dare I say, like, they actually, to me, seem pretty damn imperialist themselves. All right, so I found it. Okay, so this is from the International Marxist Humanist. It's some publication. I'm not really sure what it is, but let me just read to you what they say there. Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to share this. Okay, now, you might notice this is the third International Trade Forum for solidarity with the workers and people of Syria against economic blockade, imperialist interventions, and terrorism. These are the anti-imperialists. I don't know if you can see it, but who do you see in the back row there? Anyone? I'm going to let you guys guess if you recognize him. Hey, Barry. Good to see you. The simple Iran sides of China, Russia, Communist or China and North Korea pick a side. Well, they actually have treaties. They've always worked together. And yeah, you're totally right, especially if you're talking about the multipolar name. Sorry, you were listing names like Hedges. Hedges, I don't know if Hedges was in that list, but no, that was good stuff. No, Moondance, I'll double check. I think they don't want to believe that there's New York Republicans because 2020 idea of Republicans moving out of liberal cities to sell is a myth. I don't think so many. I was talking to Dexter Taylor. So if you guys don't know Dexter Taylor's story, he was arrested. He was put in jail because he was legally assembling firearms in his Brooklyn apartment. He had all the ATF clearances, everything like that. Dexter Taylor is a tinkerer. He believes the only reason that the Biden administration decided to come after him because they all knew what he was doing, but he has a large following, and he's black. He's a black Republican in Brooklyn. That's, according to Dexter, his words, their biggest nightmare. Okay? But, he has a lot of, I think, good criticism about how the Republicans handle races in places like New York. They pretty much write off New York City. And they don't come to New York City with ideas. Okay, they come to tell you everything is wrong with the opponent, but I rarely see ideas. And that's Dexter's words, and I agree with him. We had a nice 3-hour conversation, broken into half-hour blocks because that's all the prison will let him talk for. So, he just keeps recalling me. But we had a nice long conversation. I love talking to Dexter, and I've had him on the show, both from prison and before he went. But he makes great points. Like, they don't know how to talk to black people in the cities. I've seen it. It's terrible. They assume that what Republicans want in Kansas and Mississippi and Florida is the same thing that people need and want in New York City, and it's not. Okay? In New York City, it's a different kind of Republican. You should watch my Jimmy Wagner interview. He explains it beautifully. You have to think about things like community housing and community transportation. You have to. Because the majority of people you see in New York City are working class. And there's a hell of a lot more Republican voters here than you think. I don't know what happens to their votes, but I know a lot of them vote. And you can walk down my street, you won't find any Mondami signs up. They tear them down as soon as they go up. Okay, but even now. But it's like they've written off New York City, they've written off LA, San Francisco, Chicago. These are important cities. We are a United States. We're not a group of colonies on the same landmass. And it's like they just cede those cities away, and this is the result, is what's happening in New York with Mondami. Okay, and with all the Muslim stuff, which I honestly haven't seen really any of it here in Brooklyn, but I really haven't seen it in Manhattan either. I know it's happening, but and it's bad, but I'm just saying it's not like we're living under Sharia law here. But what I will say is that, like, if Republicans have to really change their ground game to a ground game that resembles something like the DSA. I'm not saying their communist views. What I am saying is their organizational structure. Or we're never going to ever have power, ever again. Because if we don't, we're going to lose it. While everyone's talking about the Epstein files on X, everyone's talking about Iran and the bombing, and these are important things, but what are you solving? You're not going to stop the bombing, okay, if you're against it. You're not going to really do anything. These decisions are moving forward, and, the Republicans, they're not going to as you know, we have no bearing on it. That's just the truth of the matter. Okay, you're not going to get any more Epstein files, especially the ones that are currently under investigation. Yes, investigations take years, and there's no statute of limitations on certain crimes. Okay, so you're not going to get them all. You do, yeah, it's important to know the truth, but what are you as a citizen? How is that going to make your life better? That you know? Great. Okay, that's on you. But while we're doing all that stuff, you go over to, go sit on a DSA meeting, okay, which you can go do easily. You just sign up and you could be on the stream. They have units at the lowest levels taking over zoning boards out in the street. You know what they're doing now? Food banks are their big thing. They have food banks going all over the major cities. Why? Because that's how you get out the vote. That's how you ballot harvest, because you already have access to neighborhoods you wouldn't have access to. During the Mondami campaign, you know what I didn't see? I didn't see one damn Republican pollster or person that puts out flyers. I saw a bunch of, yellow Mondami shirts handing out things everywhere. But I didn't see any Republicans, except for the ones we work with at the council level. Didn't see anything. It's like they just don't care. And our guys reached out to the young Republicans, got no answer. So I don't know what they're spending their money on, but that's why I don't contribute to the greater GOP or any of these things. And then look at your phones, too. I know I'm going on a long rant, but I don't care. And the point is changing our ground game. So I have a fake name, and I joined a couple DSA committees, so, and I'm still on them with the fake name. But what I've learned in there is how they've not only structured things, but how they really engage with people, and they're really good at it. What they're selling with the Democratic Socialists of America is not candidates. They're selling a lifestyle. They're reaching out to all these city dwellers, and that's their main focus. Not just New York City, Nashville, Atlanta, Miami, okay? They're everywhere. And what they're doing is they're not only saying, hey, come out to this rally, but what they're also saying is, hey, you know what? We got babysitters, you could come to this thing and we got people to watch your kids. Hey, bring your dogs to Coffee with Comrades. Free martial arts lessons. Like, I don't see how someone who's not political who decides, hey, I think I can get more political, they're going to see that, and then they're going to see X currently, which is like a bunch of chimpanzees throwing feces at each other and yelling about everything. Think about it, like that young man or the young woman who says, I'm going to get into it, and I've heard really bad things about the Democrats, and I'm going to go hang out with these Republicans. They open that X store, and it's like, Wah! And they're like, whoa, I don't want to go in there. Then they go over here, and it's like, hey, come on in. Hey, you're good. You're good. Doesn't mean they are good people. What I'm saying is that this is how they suck them in. I can't see them going to the romper room over there. That's chaos that we've let it become. And not going over here where there's free martial arts lessons, a built-in social life, and, a chance to be involved with something. That's what they're selling. I don't know how conservatives are ever going to compete with that unless they get off of I'm going to be the next, big investigative journalist who wins the Pulitzer by solving the Epstein files. It's like, that's all great and good, but there can be only one, or people are on the ground taking over zoning boards and taking them back from the socialists, because that's how they get us. None of them are talking about the things we're talking about. They're talking about, let me do an agenda for the next meeting. Everyone's got their little role. They're very good communists. But the thing about communists, it's an organism, okay? And we can all be, solo shepherd soldiers guarding our own little flock on the hill, but until we kind of join together to fight that, like we did for a brief moment, they're going to win. And people need to take it seriously. I'm not saying the stuff people are doing for the Epstein files is important or not important. I hope they catch all those scoundrels. But what I am saying is that if that's all you're doing, you might not even be allowed to look into those things if the Democrats win the midterms. That's what this keeps coming back to. So let me get back to the point here. All right, so do you guys notice who's in the back row there? Yeah, there we go. I see Moondance is the winner. Max, that's right there. I don't know. Oh, you can't see can't see. Yeah, you can see there he is right there. That's Max. And that was in 2019. Okay. And again, how'd Max get the trust of some conservatives? Because he was at the Defeat the Mandates nonsense. Not nonsense, very important stuff, but you know what I mean. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Sorry, I'm never used to this Mac. All right, I can't. But I'll just read it to you. So this was written by a Syrian person who kept their name, I believe, yet. So basically, they kind of masked. This is, when Assad was still in power. But it says, erasing people through disinformation, Syria and the anti-imperialism fools. Disreputable writers and outlets often operating under the aegis of independent journalism with purportedly left-wing views are spreading corrosive propaganda and disinformation that aims to strip Syrians of political agency. First appeared in English in New Politics Online. That's where the article appeared. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a little hard to understand, but there's a couple points in here. First paragraph. The years since Russia intervened in Syria on behalf of Bashar al-Assad, Assad lives in Russia now, have been marked by a curious malign development, the emergence of pro-Assad allegiances in the name of anti-imperialism. Among some who otherwise generally identify as progressive or left, and the consequent spread of manipulative, this must be translated, disinformation that routinely deflects attention away from the well-documented abuses of Assad and his allies. These people, the anti-imperialists, portraying themselves as opponents of imperialism. They routinely exhibit a highly selective attention to matters of intervention and human rights violations that often aligns with the governments of Russia and China, just like I was saying. Those who disagree with their highly policed views are frequently and falsely branded as regime change enthusiasts or dupes of Western political interest, or these days, Mossad. And then a couple other points. So they go in and they say, the divisive and sectarianizing role played by this group is unmistakable. In their simplistic view, all pro-democracy and all pro-dignity movements that go against Russia or Chinese state interests are routinely portrayed as top-down work of Western interference. None are none are organic. None are of a piece. Sorry, guys, I have glasses and I don't have them. None are of a piece with decades of independent domestic struggle against brutal dictatorship, and none truly represent the desires of the people, demanding the right to lives of dignity rather than oppression and abuse. Among others, this group includes the American writers and at the mysteriously funded Grayzone, Max Blumenthal, Raina Kalek, who's appearing on George Galloway's thing, Ben Norton, and Aaron Mate. Australian academic Tim Anderson and blogger Caitlin Johnson, and Working Group on Syria Propaganda Media, members Tim Hayward, Vanessa Beeley, all these in the chart, Piers Robinson, as well as various writers at Mint Press, Consortium News, Zero Hedge, which surprised me, antiwar.com, and I do have to check the Zero Hedge thing, which is hard because they're not allowed to use their real names, Global Research Canada, Moon of Alabama, there it is again, and Voltaire.net. Some, like Jimmy Dore and Kim Iversen, are contemporary media personalities. A number of political activists and advocacy organizations, including the U.S. Peace Council, Veterans for Peace, Worker Worlds Party. And by the way, I haven't checked the Veterans for Peace yet, but I've seen some stuff about them that makes me think it's true. I'll get back to you. United National Anti-War Coalition, Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL. They're the ones most active in the anti-ICE demonstration, have espoused similar views. But what unites them all is a refusal to contend with the crimes of the Assad regime, or even to acknowledge that a brutally repressed popular uprising against Assad ever even took place. Where have we seen that before? Talk to most people in China under the age of 40. They've never heard of the Tiananmen Square massacre. It's almost been erased. So what they're basically saying is they're towing the line. I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I will leave it in the comments so you can read it. This is a really good piece that was written. It's a little hard to understand because I think it's a bit verbose, but I had to read it a couple times. But they go on into, we take these attempts, they end it like this, and this is important. Collectively, Syrian experiences from the revolution to the present pose a fundamental challenge to the world as it appears to these people, the anti-imperialists. Those among us who directly oppose Assad regime, often at great cost, did not do so because of some Western imperialist plot, but because decades of abuse, brutality, corruption were and remain intolerable. To insist otherwise and support Assad is to attempt to strip Syrians of all political agency and endorse the Assad's long-standing policy of domestic politicide, which has deprived Syrians of any meaningful say in their government and circumstances. We take these attempts to disappear Syrians from the world of politics, solidarity, and partnership as a quite consistent with the character of the regimes these people so evidently admire. And they seem to really admire them. This is the anti-imperialism and leftism of the unprincipled, the lazy, and of fools, and only reinforces the dysfunctional international gridlock exhibited by the UN Security Council. We hope that readers of this piece will join us in opposing it. So this is from 2019, okay? And there's, again, just to point out, this is Marxists attacking these anti-imperialists. So it's complicated, but you could see what's happening here. These, people in Syria were largely like, it's all fake, it's all fake. And what's kind of creepy when I read this, besides seeing Max Blumenthal sitting there, is that I remember being in D.C., right up until like 2019. And one of the guys I was partners with, he was like really pro-Assad. And I was like, well, hey, man, he's my business partner. It's like, yeah, but I don't know. I've read these reports. And he's like, oh, Obama's lying. He's just making it up. And I said, well, is Trump lying too? Because they kind of took the same action. I think Obama's a bit weak on Syria, but he had the planes on the ground. He kind of held back there. But and this guy had like CNN reporters that were like visiting Assad on a daily basis, that knew Assad. And I'm like, I don't know, man. This looks like he's a brutal mass murderer to me based on this evidence. But anyways, and that's when I first started. So what I'm saying is these people, these anti-imperialists, were feeding information to conservatives at the Republican Club, and they were buying it. And so you see the reach that the anti-imperialists have. They're much more dangerous than anyone in the influence ecosystem right now. Mark my words. Because you'll find yourself agreeing with about 30% of their points. Like, yeah, that is messed up. That's why you have to research. Because once you research deeply and you research them, you realize, okay, I see what's really going on here. I'm going to save the other part of this for another time because it's late, and I want to get it right for you guys. I will say this. Go to the thing you want to check out, if you really want to flesh this out, is you want to go to the Consumer Diligence Substack. This is not to get you to buy anything. You could do a free subscription if you want. I am saying that, we appreciate the donations, but you can read this for free. So let me just get their Substack. Sorry, consumer. There it is. Yep. Okay, so, yeah. So this is the, where'd it go? I know Dallas is working on changing some things around, but hopefully I can still find it. Sorry guys, trapped by design. All right, so this is the Consumer Diligence Substack, but now I gotta find my damn article here. Well, he might be updating it. Damn, guys, I'm so sorry. I will come back to that. But yeah. But basically what we talk about is we talk about the other APAC, okay? And unless you see it there, but I don't. But yeah, I think Dallas is, we're adding some things to it. So that's okay. But what we're talking about there is the other APAC, so I'll just go to their site so you can see it. Okay, and that is the association. It's APAC. And it's not the Jewish one, just so you know. APAC Association. There we go. So it's not apac.org. It is... Here we go. It's actually where I got that list of people from with this. My God. Don't worry, we'll get there. Oh, why does that thing keep popping up? Every time I'm scrolling, it does this. So let me get to the top here. Find that for you. Okay. There we go. All right. So this is the APAC we're talking about. And Dallas, if you're listening, it's okay that you don't have that up. That means you're doing what we talked about you doing, so that's great. All right. This is the one I'm talking about. So this is my Perplexity screen here. But what we're talking about here is the American Investment in Popular Action Committees. Here is their website. Right here. Okay, so this is definitely an NGO you guys want to pay attention to, especially if you're investigating. This is the Association for Investment. That's APAC. They do that on purpose. They chose a name that has the APAC symbol, but these actually, this was actually formed in 2006. It was inspired by this nun, the Syrian nun that they were all like praising. She's like one of the worst propagandists out there. These include our first project, the International Solidarity Movement of Northern California, and the spectacularly successful Free Gaza movement, which broke the siege of Gaza by sea in August 2008. It did not break the siege. And which became, there was really no siege, which became independent from the association since then. Actually, they had a big fight. That's why they became independent. Other projects that closed and became independent include 14 Friends of Palestine. You may know who they are. No Tax Dollars for Israel, the Barbara J. Raskin Scholarship, the Global March to Jerusalem, which went horrible for them this last time around. We continue to fiscally sponsor projects concerned with human rights, primarily in West Asia and Latin America, as well as some that have no specific location, such as the Serena Shim Award. But we are open to sponsorship without geographic limitations. Don't even get me started. So if you go in there, you can see these are the projects. Free Palestine Movement, Global Movement to Gaza, Good Shepherd Collective, Haiti Solidarity Project, Nakba Tour, One State Assembly, Palestinian Children's Welfare Fund, which we're looking into that too, because where'd the money go? The Latin American ones, the Sovereignty Support Movement, that's one to keep an eye on. Taxpayers Against Genocide. All of these things are anti-Israel or anti-imperialist. And look, oh my gosh, look at that. There's one of their projects right there, the Grayzone is an actual project, the Grayzone. That's Max Blumenthal's so-called news. Okay, so now you go into the Serena Shim Award, and for anyone who wants to know this, I'm going to go ahead and put that URL right in the chat. There we go, so you can all see. Hopefully you can all see that. And then I'll put it up on the banner if you can't. That should pop up. There it is. It's a terrible acronym, but okay, so now you go in here now, go to the Serena Shim Award. Okay, and there's that. So this was, I read the About Serena Shim Award for Uncompromised Integrity in Journalism, which is hilarious. Honors the non-mainstream journalist who continue to tell challenging truths in difficult times. Funds provided by this award enable these courageous journalists to continue their work in an environment that penalizes them for their clarity of vision and willingness to expose the powerful. You can read about this award, the history of it. Press TV, just so you know, is Iranian television. That's an Iranian news outlet. And then you go up here to the laureates, and here's what we found. List of laureates. I've covered this on another show. That list you saw on my earlier notes all comes from the Serena Shim Award. So you could see the money seems to come from Syria and other places into the, let's call it dark APAC, I guess, or evil APAC, or whatever you want to call it, but the other APAC, the non-Jewish APAC, comes into there, then it goes out to these projects, and those projects, to answer your NGO question earlier, fund different things, and you can see they have funded an entire army of anti-imperialist propagandists. The ones we've already talked about, Rainier Kalek, Vanessa Beeley, Jimmy Dore Show, Max Blumenthal, Mint Press, Whitney Webb, Moon of Alabama, go up further, Venezuela Analysis, Black Agenda Report, Julian Assange, who's deceased, Caitlin Johnson, Kim Iversen, goes on and on, Aaron Mate, part of the Grayzone, Ben Norton, part of the Grayzone, The Last American Vagabond, if you've ever heard of that. The Grayzone is actually a laureate. So a lot of focus on the Grayzone, as you could see, and Max Blumenthal. Kate Clarenberg is Grayzone. Jackson Hinkle, another laureate, is the founder of the American Communist Party that is pushing for the tripolar world, and America sucks and China's good. And then go up here. Scott Ritter, we talked about him earlier, anti-war, the people that are harassing me under the Department of War fake user thing. George Galloway, who recently blocked me when I started reporting on this live on this show, and so many more. So we're going through all these, but I will post the notes I have in the description so you can have them, or actually I'll post them in a Substack. But, so the reason I want you to keep an eye on that is because I think the most telling thing about this dark APAC, and this is if you take nothing away from this, I want you to take this away. Okay, if you take nothing else away from this very long 2 hours, hopefully you enjoyed it. I want you to understand that the founder, the president of this nonprofit, this APAC, which funds all those things, okay, is actually a guy named Kamal Abayed. Okay, who is Kamal Abayed? Kamal Abayed is one of the biggest voices behind the I'm just tickled when I say this because it's just crazy. Kamal Abayed is the guy who's behind it's called 9/11 Truth Commission or whatever. So you may have recalled there was a documentary about the 9/11 and the structural integrity of that. Well, a lot of that came from this guy, Kamal Abayed. So I'm going to click on his, here we go. So he runs an organization called the 9/11 Truth Commission or something like that. Let me just find it here. Kamal Abayed, there we go. But he basically runs this, damn it, where'd it go? Yeah, so he runs this thing for kind of explaining where the 9/11 attacks happen and all that. I'll find him. I'm just going to Google him. Sorry, guys. I think they're making me sleepy with their space lasers. Who knows? Okay, here we go. All right, so Kamal Abayed, let me get to his website. There it is. All right. So you remember, let me start again. Remember the whole thing about the 9/11 architects doing the whole thing about like the structural integrity? Well, a lot of people have cited Kamal Abayed on this. Max Blumenthal has had him on his show. He's kind of the go-to guy for the whole thing that it was an inside job and there was explosives planted everywhere and it was set to come down. Well, a lot of it came from this guy, Kamal Abayed. A lot of it is pushed by the people on that previous list you saw. A lot of them push that. I mean, they all agree that what this guy says. So let's do the math on that. The president of this fake APAC or the other APAC is the same guy pushing one of the core guys pushing the 9/11 structural integrity thing is Kamal Abayad. Kamal Abayad is Syrian, okay? All of the money, Syria's all over this thing. These same people now are the pro-Iranian, leave them alone, leave those poor nice mullahs with the fluffy white beards alone. It's these people. It's the same network that right here. And don't take my word for it, just go to their social media. Now that's one of their pillars, right? One of the pillars of BS is 9/11, explosives, structural integrity. That's what brought them down. There's no way the planes could have brought them down. Well, the guy who's the architect and structural engineer is also the guy that funds the same people pushing that theory. Almost all of them come through this association of the fake APAC. So you see what I mean there? You want to start attacking that 9/11 theory? Start there. I think, and none of them have said, oh, by the way, this guy, he owns the association that pays me. But yeah, Kamal Abayad. Don't forget that name, okay? He is this guy that runs the fake APAC, is also one of the key architects behind the 9/11 architect conspiracy theory and actual conspiracy theory, is the president of the very organization that funds most of those voices that push that narrative. So there's an easy place for you to start. Look, hold on, this is important. A board member of an organization, Kamal Abayad, is board member that espouses conspiracy theory that the destruction of the World Trade Center, yes, was not caused by a terrorist attack. Exactly. And, I mean, you see it. I know Moondance sees it. And this is like a long-standing theory. Like, I saw that documentary way back then. I was like, oh, it kind of makes sense, but I didn't know anything about architecture. But when I saw this, I'm like, wait a minute. So the guy behind the largest voice, the key guy that a lot of people cite behind the theory that it wasn't terrorists, it was Israelis and the CIA planting explosives or some nonsense, that it was them. So that theory came from a Syrian architect, okay, who was actually arrested in the Gaza Strip one time, who formed this San Francisco-based nonprofit who's run by Paul LaRuti. Actually, he's the guy that does the day-to-day operations, who's also been over there trying to break the siege and everything. But the Syrian architect is the guy behind those conspiracies, who then runs this journalist award that gives money to all the people that push that theory. You picking up what I'm throwing down here? This is how you defeat the anti-imperialist messaging, but you have to work together. You have to retweet people's stuff. No one's going to be a star. No one, myself included. I'm not here to get Pulitzer Prize. I'm here to stop this BS so we have some chance at getting some unification on this side to keep our power at the midterms. These people want to tear it down. They don't care about you. They won't suffer the way we will suffer, but they will eventually suffer. But you want to tear down one of those pillars, go after this and amplify this and write it up on your own. I make sure you cite me, not because I need the credit, but because you're showing a network, and I'll be more inclined to amplify you, and everyone will see. When you do that too, it shows integrity. When you cite each other and give people credit for their work, it creates integrity. When people read that, they see you're a person of integrity, they're going to keep reading. If you're trying to take all the credit for yourself, something I never do, something you should never do, especially in this fight, you're just really undermining your own anyone's sense of that you have any integrity. So again, I don't need the credit, but it's the right thing to do to make your readers trust you more, okay? And it helps create a good, solid trustworthy network of people working in the same direction. Okay, and that's so, take these things, amplify them, just say at the beginning, so and so said this, Brian O'Shea said this, check it out, and then list your sources at the end, because that's going to send them here, that's going to send them back to you. And then if you put out an article like that, send it to me, and then I can cite it. You see the way that network works? That's how these people work. That's how MAGA needs to start working, because not enough people are doing that. Okay, but start there. And if you have other stuff you find, please send it to Brian at dailyclout.io. We're going to stop it there. So what did we learn tonight? We learned there's a whole giant network of these anti-imperialists. We learned that updated, less aggressive comment. So some people making legitimate criticisms might be mostly not good. I cleaned it up. I stayed and listened. That's really cool, El, and I appreciate that. Let me answer that. Depends how you're asking. Like, if you ask in context of something, if you say, like, for instance, if I say country X is bad and your response is, well, country Y is bad too, that doesn't really address the point of country X being bad. That's a total other thing. If I say this network seems to be a network working together, okay, to spread a false message, and I just kind of, I wouldn't say proved it, but I gave you a preponderance of evidence to show that's likely the case. You're not bad for believing what they say. You're not bad for even reposting it. But once you know, and you keep reposting it, and you keep pushing it, even if you know it's wrong, yeah, I'd say you're bad. I say if you're pushing lies that can affect other people's lives in a negative way, that's the definition of bad, maybe evil. I'm not saying you're evil. Okay, so, but asking questions? No, of course not. You should ask questions. Hell, the name of the show is Investigate Everything. You should ask questions. But you should also ask questions not only of the people you disagree with, ask questions of the people you agree with. Like, if people say something that just doesn't make sense, ask questions. For example, I used to like Alex Jones. I don't know him personally, but my wife does. She's been on his show. They've kind of been, interacting professionally since 9/11. But then all of a sudden I saw the messaging coming out of Alex Jones. It seemed very pro-Russian, I guess I'd say. Not even like not pro-American, okay? And I'll just say that. And I was a little shocked. And it's hard to ask the people that you agree with questions like I had to ask him, but I'll even share. He never responded, so I'm not like betraying anyone's trust. But I sent him a DM and I said, look, I noticed you were at this thing in Russia. You may not remember me, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to find it. There we go. Yeah, so I'll just share what I wrote. I mean, and again, he didn't respond, so I'm not like betraying anything. But here I said, let me cover up these other ones. You don't need to see those. Sorry, guys. All right. Sorry, I just don't want you to, I don't want to, there's other people on here, so I'm just kind of moving the screen around so it doesn't show them, because that would be wrong. There we go. There, I fixed it. All right, see if this works. Great. Yeah, so I sent, and to the point, L. I was surprised, and I found that he was a keynote speaker at this Russian thing, and I said, hey, Alex, Brian O'Shea here, Naomi Wolf's husband, and, 2.5 decade Intel analyst. Quick question. Why were you at this conference in Russia called the Forum of the Future 2050? In Russia, it was billed as Moscow 2050. You were there along with self-proclaimed communists like Jackson Hinkle, founder of the American Communist Party, circa 2024, and disgusting Marxists like UK's George Galloway. I don't like George. Why were you there? I get the translation tomorrow of the entire transcript from my friend Trevor Loudon by tomorrow, but I would like to hear it from you. Why were you there? None of these people are friends of America. None of them. Max Blumenthal was there too, and he hates America. Just read his work. As I am sure you know, he is the son of Hillary's senior advisor, Sidney Blumenthal, I misspelled Sidney, who coined the phrase vast right-wing conspiracy. Max is founder of the Grayzone, funded by the Syrian Socialist Nationalist Party, a pro-Assad group that eventually eclipsed the Socialist Party, Socialist Ba'ath Party. So I gone on, and so I basically gave him all the facts. I said, I only have a podcast for therapeutic and patriotic reasons, so I'm not trying to get clicks. I said, thank you in advance. I hope to hear from you and hear about this. And if directly contacted, everything else is on background and, of course, off the record. Naomi can vouch for me as many others can, blah, blah, blah. So I did ask. Okay, I didn't get a response, of course, but I asked. So, yeah, point is, it's important that you ask questions, please. But don't just ask the people you disagree with. Ask the people you agree with. Hey, how'd you come to that conclusion? Hey, I found this. It kind of goes counter to what you're saying. And this is a great crowd to be in because they all do that. They all do that to each other and me. So, nothing wrong with asking questions. There's just something wrong, in my opinion, with getting the answer, verifying the answer, and realizing you were wrong, and then sticking with the narrative because for whatever your reasons. And on that note, I want to read a really interesting passage, as I know a lot of you are frustrated with people that you're like, how can they still push this? This is insanity. And they kind of get into this. Here we go. Okay. Here it is. So this is from The Delusion of Crowds, which is not McKay, this is Bernstein. And it's a commentary, a lot of it based on the classic McKay, Extraordinary Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. This is called The Delusions of Crowds, very good book. So what he says here is he's talking about this very thing. Not only do people respond, so he's saying, why do people respond to narratives rather than facts? And they say, not only do people respond more to narratives than to facts and data, but preliminary studies demonstrate that the more compelling the story, the more it erodes our critical thinking skills. This research suggests, in addition, an inherent conflict of interest between the suppliers and consumers of opinion. The former wish to convince and will devise the most compelling narratives possible, whereas the latter, if they are rational, should intentionally avoid those narratives and rely on the data, facts, and analytical discipline. And they go on in this, and I'll post this section of this book, if you don't have it, to the thing. But basically what he's saying is, you're seeing what Candace is doing. You're seeing what a lot of these people do, and on both sides. They're selling a narrative. And numerous studies show that we all like a good narrative better than we like facts. When I'm done with my day of facts and figures and trying to verify things, you know what I like to do? I like to get on Amazon and find the worst horror movie I could find because it's so far from reality that it gives my brain a break. I consume that easily because I'm tired, okay? But the thing is, if you're consuming narratives all day long, and you're avoiding facts because it might ruin the fantasy of the narrative, you're getting sucked into something that eventually will become your grasp of reality, which then leads you to violently defend that because no one's going to take away that reality that is so squishy and cozy that you've allowed yourself to wrap around yourself like a blanket. And so that's why the fact-based type opinions and fact-based research are always behind the popular narrative. And if you look at the most successful podcasts, they can tell the story either total BS with no facts. They tend to get huge audiences. Now, some are artificial, but they're easy to consume. Okay, like I was listening to Candace Owens long ago, and I never double-checked her work because it was a compelling narrative, and I wasn't researching it anyways. It wasn't something I was looking at, so I felt no need. And it was a great way to get through a 1 hour car drive. I'm like, oh, what's she gonna find now? Same with a lot of them. I think the success of Steve Bannon's podcast is he creates a drumbeat of that you're going into battle. Like there's a compelling narrative in it, okay, and a lot of information. And so I think that's something we have to just be disciplined about. Like, what are you here for? Are you here for information or here to be entertained? Are you not entertained? So if you're just tuning into podcasts for entertainment, that's great. I say have fun. Like, but remember, don't start thinking pro wrestling is real. Okay, so people that have bought into what Candace Owens is doing in particular, they're buying into a narrative that is so demonstrably ridiculous and fake, but they don't care. It's become their thing. And it's just like WWF. I've been to a WWF thing when I was a kid. I was like, this is great, but it was so fake, especially when you go there in person. It's like a big ballet dance with giant men throwing each other around, seemingly. But there's people that have gotten into arguments with me when I got into the MMA thing, and we had a MMA site a long time ago called MMA Madness. And I'm like, well, that's real. And WWF people get really mad. Like, saying wrestling ain't real? I'm like, it's not. And they get mad. They get violent. You might remember John Stossel, I think. He got beat up by a freaking wrestler back when he was a reporter because he'd said it was fake. I mean, it's the same thing happening now with a lot of these narratives. So, it's like, just, you can tune into it. Like, I have to listen to it every now and then just to see what the messaging is. I don't listen to all of it. But I'm very well aware that it's fake. And that's why there's never really any sources. And that's the biggest tell. It's a clever narrative if they avoid sources. If the sources lead back to their own publication, that's not a source. Okay, that's just going to wear you out. New York Times sort of keeps going in circles. Okay, and it's okay. Get entertained by the narrative, but don't believe it, especially when so much is on the line. And then, if anything, just investigate it, investigate everything. And on that note, I'm gonna bounce. I just came out. No, you did. Okay, look, you did not come out swinging, not at all. It's totally cool. We're all big people here. We can take it. Someone comes out swinging, we're just gonna, kind of block until you wear yourself out. Then we can talk. It's all good. That was a good conversation. I appreciate you having it here, definitely. Good questions and good comments. So no harm, no foul, and we hope you'll be back. In the meantime, everyone, please go over to Rumble. Make sure you follow the show and share the show. I will post, as I always do, the notes by tomorrow. And more to follow next Thursday. If there's going to be an earlier one, I'll let you know. I am looking forward to having one of the VPs of the MTA union on here to let you know what's going on with the unions versus the MTA. This is like a mobster story like you won't believe. He lives in my neighborhood here. We're friends, and he's willing to come on and talk about some of the vast corruption at the MTA, Mass Transit Authority here in New York, that has ramifications that go as far as, you guessed it, China. So we will definitely talk about that. That's going to be awesome. See you, Donnie. Good to see you all the way from Hawaii. Aloha back at you. And everyone else that came out here. Kwaian, of course, Moondance, and Kwaian, if I'm pronouncing Kwaian. Thanks for coming out. Moondance, always a pleasure. Let's see if I was S. Duck Woo, good to see you. L, good to see you. Donnie, always a pleasure, of course. And did I get everyone? And by the way, this isn't everyone, it's everyone I can see through the streamer, because there's a few thousand here, so that's great. Brian Fiore, thank you for getting me on track earlier. Don't forget, love to see these notes and where you're going with that. Roscoe, always a pleasure to see you as well. You could reach me right there, share the show. Get more people here, and please go over to Daily Clout and donate. Keep us afloat. We lost 2 sponsors in the same day, and I fear it was my fault because I was talking about this very thing when we lost them. Could be a coincidence. I don't know. Don't have time to investigate it. Moondance. I didn't. Okay, yeah, you got it. All right, guys, that's it from me. I will talk to you soon. And, don't forget to follow me on X at Brian O'Shea. sorry, at Brian O'Shea SPI. So follow me over on X, and then if you mention the show, of course, I will follow you back as I always do. But just send me. You can't send me a DM, so you got to do it like publicly. But you could just say, at, please follow back. I saw the show the other night. And then once I follow you, then you can DM me. And I only do that because I was getting a lot of spam. Let me show that. Yeah, follow me over there. Look forward to seeing you guys. Bring your leads. Bring your A game. Let's debunk one of these 4 pillars. And don't forget the 4 pillars are 9/11, Iraqi war. You're not going to debunk that one because that was a real screw up. What you can go after on the Iraqi war thing is how so many of people like Tucker Carlson supported it, okay? And how many people, the wrong people, I think, benefited from it. I don't think that was a good war to get involved in. I could be wrong. So 9/11, the Iraq War, the Epstein files. One of the narratives on the Epstein files is like, oh, it's Epstein's Jewish and there's Jewish people in there, so they're all bad. But they never mention all the Arabs in there or the Germans in there. Like there's a lot or the Clintons. That one's easy to go after. Plus, there's a lot of stuff still to be looked at. And it looks like right now it's going to be the J6 bomber thing is what everyone's going after, including Roscoe. Sorry, Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to be leading that charge. So check it all out, and I will be making a list, and we'll be keep digging into the Imperialists, and we're going to make that graph bigger. And then really, I would like to get each person assigned to each influencer based on their size, and you just go at them. Just go at them constantly. Just, don't spread yourself out. Don't get in your lane. Anyone that wants to volunteer, and it's like, you're going to be assigned to Max. You're going to be assigned to this person, that person, and just pound them with facts and sources and sites and questions. We're going to have a lot of fun, and it's for a good cause. And by the way, no matter what side you're on, but if you like all your freedoms now, whether you're left or right, if we lose the midterms, it's over. These conversations are over. It's not hyperbole, in my opinion. So I'll talk to you later. And this has been Brian O'Shea with Investigate Everything. Have a great night, everyone.